Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook, Marvel's King of the Undead. Chapter 81. First, he knocked Henry to the ground with a light punch. Then, countless fist shadows fell on Henry like meteors. Due to the sudden increase in power, Wayne was unable to perfectly control his power and always liked to knock people away. So Wayne only used 1/3 of his strength this time, but increased the frequency of his attacks. The improvement in physical fitness not only improved Wayne's strength, but also greatly enhanced his speed. This speed is not just movement speed, but also attack speed. For a moment, Wayne seemed to really have the effect of the Pegasus meteor punch. As for Henry, who was attacked, when he just threw the first punch, he was still a little surprised why Wayne's strength suddenly decreased so much. The hand hanging on the ground was still ready to secretly take out the needle and make a desperate comeback. However, the next second, he no longer had such thoughts. Although Wayne's strength has become lighter, he used to punch one after another. Now, Henry felt like Wayne was hitting him with 10 punches. Countless fists fell on him every second. The strength is indeed 3 times smaller, but the number of attacks is 10 times greater. Poor Henry could barely hold on for 4 seconds under Wayne's Pegasus meteor punch. When he was about to pass out, Henry wanted to yell. After all, the loser would not lose the battle. As Boone's #1 gold medal hitter, he still has some dignity. However, just as he opened his mouth and before he could speak, several fists hit Henry's front teeth accurately. His teeth flew all over the sky. The next second, Henry vomited out a large mouthful of blood and fainted. Suddenly stopping the attack, Wayne leaned back and avoided Henry's blood-spraying attack. He looked at Henry, who had been beaten into a state of disgrace. Wayne, invincible, is so lonely. After silently pretending, Wayne was in a good mood, and the troubles of being disgusted by the lightning hedgehog had been swept away. He looked at the soldiers who had begun to counterattack and the students who were retreating steadily. Wayne turned into a black shadow again and rushed towards the soldiers, while shouting loudly. "The devil Wayne is back. A little soldier with 1 punch." With the addition of Wayne, the soldiers who had just taken control of the situation collapsed again. The few people who had finally escaped had just regained their momentum and expressed their grievances. They were holding back their anger and were preparing to take revenge on these students. Suddenly, I discovered in despair that the pervert who cheated was back again. And this time the pervert also changed his tactics. In the past, you would hear the sound of singing appearing. When you first started to be afraid and ready to escape, the black shadow would suddenly appear and send you to hell. Several soldiers thought this was scary enough. However, he never expected that this pervert would be stimulated somehow. "When I come back this time, I won't sing anymore, but I won't punch you to death either." He obviously has the power to kill someone with 1 punch, but he must. Every time he came in front of a soldier, he would talk about something, such as Pegasus meteor fist, Lucian Shenglongba. Then use various fancy postures and methods to beat the soldiers to death, and then kill them when they have beaten enough. To these soldiers, Wayne's actions were nothing short of brutal murder. Not only was it humiliating to their hearts, but the most important thing was that they were killed in an instant without any pain, but now they had to be beaten violently and then killed, and they had to cry for father and mother in pain before they died. When the last soldier who escaped was killed by Wayne, this soldier shouted on behalf of the soldiers who had been roped in with him. "I shouldn't have come here. I'm afraid it's too late for you to regret it now. When you decide to attack Xavier Academy for Geniuses, your death will be determined." Looking at the corpse that slowly fell and remained silent, Wayne said that he felt like he was also a superhero at this moment. He didn't know that what the soldier regretted was why he had to escape and be tortured and killed. He thought that what the soldier regretted was that he came to participate in this mission. "Fortunately, I have you this time." At this moment, Logan, covered in blood, also walked to Wayne's side. "You're good too." Wayne looked at Logan, who took out a cigar from somewhere and started smoking. His body was covered with bullet holes, which were still healing, not counting the wounds that had already healed. It can be said that although Logan did not kill as many people as Wayne in this battle, he was definitely the one who received the most attacks in this battle. I don't know how many bullets were wasted on these soldiers. Suddenly, Wayne lowered his body and started groping for something on the soldier's body. No, why not? After searching around, Wayne muttered a few words and suddenly took off the soldier's pants. Next to him, Logan had just taken a puff of a cigarette. When he saw the scene in front of him, his eyes twitched and he almost choked. Doesn't everyone have one? Wayne finally gave up after searching for a long time. What are you looking for? Logan asked curiously. Have you never seen that syringe? No, what syringe? Logan still looked confused. Suddenly, Wayne suddenly ran towards a place. When he came back again, Logan found that he was holding a backpack in his hand. Here is what you were looking for. Logan took another puff, with a suction-like expression on his face. After every battle, he likes to take a few mouthfuls on the battlefield, mixed with the taste of blood. There is an intoxicating smell in the blood, especially iron blood. Then Wayne next to him did not appreciate the iron blood, but looked at the bag in his hand with tears in his eyes. Yes, this is the syringe I am looking for. All the syringes are here. Wayne was devastated. He found this backpack on Henry. Some of the needles had been broken when he was beaten by Wayne, but a few were still intact. The reason why Wayne was so desperate and rushed forward with lightning in his arms just now was because Wayne thought that everyone had this syringe and was worried that others would be in danger if he delayed for too long. As a result, Wayne never expected that Henry would put all the needles on himself. Why can you be so cowardly? Wayne complained in his mind. In fact, if Wayne thinks about it carefully, he can find that Henry's move is very reasonable. When everyone first saw Henry's figure and voice, they would subconsciously think that he was a very tough man. He also has the rough power of lightning. This kind of person must be tough when faced with danger. But would a tough guy hide behind a small flower bed to observe the battle situation? Would a tough guy make all his abilities and moves look like a turtle shell? Would a tough guy sneak around in the woods for a long time just to sneak in and trick someone? It can only be said that Henry's appearance deceived everyone. The reason why he was able to reach the level of a gold medal thug was also because of this reason. Everyone thought that he was a single-minded rough guy. As a result, I never expected that this rough guy was actually a coward at heart and was cautious in everything he did. As long as you can sneak attack, you can do anything. So Henry's former enemies fell at his hands. Until he met Wayne, although Wayne was also deceived by his appearance. But Henry was also deceived by Wayne's appearance. He never expected that a person who looked like a pretty boy could be so tough. Even if I carry the lightning, I will come to hammer you. As a pretty boy, aren't you worried about your face? Even if you have the ability to heal yourself and don't worry about your face, aren't you afraid of your hairstyle? You must know that after being struck by a large amount of lightning, your hair will definitely not be saved. If Henry could still get up and talk, Wayne would surely answer his question. Of course I'm afraid. Logan watched as Wayne stared blankly at the backpack at first. Then he suddenly touched his head for some reason. At this time, Logan realized that Wayne's hair was gone and couldn't help but ask. Where's your hair? You must know that when he first started performing, Logan saw Wayne's specially made hairstyle, but he got into a fight and became bald. Been eaten by him. Suddenly, Wayne broke out and beat the unconscious Henry again. Fight and eat hair. Logan silently looked at the soldier who was beaten by Wayne. Some people don't understand how such elite soldiers have the habit of eating hair. Isn't this why women pull their hair out when they fight? Looking at Wayne, who was speechless and choked after venting his anger, Logan thought about this question silently. After a while, Wayne seemed to get over the shock of being bald. Picking up a soldier's helmet from the ground, Wayne silently put the helmet on his head, then turned and walked towards the students. Why are you wearing a helmet? Logan chased after him from behind. The famous Wolverine now feels that his brain is not enough. I can't always understand the thoughts and actions of this rising star. While he was still worried about eating his hair, Wayne inexplicably put on a hat again. My head hurts. Glancing at Logan, Wayne continued walking. Quote. Uncle Wolf was stunned. Although it is true that his brain is not functioning well after being implanted with Edelman metal, the number of times he was confused in a day today was still as high as in a week. There are indeed too many generation gaps between Uncle Wolf, who has lived for more than 100 years, and Wayne, who is only 16 years old. How could he not understand Wayne's current mood? After all, he never cared about his appearance. And Wayne, a teenager who just thought he had become the idol singer on campus. I was originally hoping that after this battle was over, I would find time to hold a solo concert in school to give back to my fans. Unexpectedly, suddenly there was a thunderbolt from the sky. For some reason, I'm bald. This makes Wayne very uncomfortable. How can he face his vast fans? You can't form a bald choir group with Professor X. The most important thing is that he can't tell others the reason for his baldness. He can't tell others that his hair was bald due to his own random speculation. Just as Logan and Wayne were walking this way, Rena, who had woken up, had already started organizing other students to clean up the battlefield. Although Wayne, Logan and others were fighting hard at the front, the school still suffered heavy casualties. Mainly because the initial defense organization was too slow. The first few rounds of strafing killed a large number of students and employees. He looked at the corpses lying in rows in front of him. Wayne was suddenly silent. He didn't actually know many people among these corpses, but when he glanced over, he still saw a few familiar people. For example, the ant lying third in the second row. The ant is an employee in the school cafeteria and is responsible for serving meals to the students. Every time she sees Wayne and the others, the ant will squint her eyes and happily help Wayne get a few more spoons. She is also looking at the little fat man and Liao Liang next to her. People are indignant. The reason why he came to work at the school was not because he was short of money, but because he once took his young son on a trip when he was young and encountered a robber on the way. The robber seemed a little dissatisfied after taking the money. Just as she was begging the nearby onlookers to no avail and was about to accept her fate, a mutant suddenly rushed out from the roadside. After the mutant used his ability to fight off the robber, before the ant could thank him, the crowd who had been watching indifferently suddenly became lively. Everyone began to curse the mutant, using words such as fool and devil. In the end, the mutant ran away amidst the abuse from the crowd, and Big Mom also lost the opportunity to thank him in person. So after her son got married, the ant came to the school alone, not for the meager salary, but for the hope of helping more mutants. Over the years, she has seen too many incidents of mutants being discriminated against. Whenever she sees this happening, she will think back to the mutant who helped her and the faces of the onlookers. So she hopes that she can do her part for the children of mutants, let them feel the warmth from ordinary people, and tell them that not all ordinary people discriminate against them. However, this ant is now lying on the ground coldly. Her son may not even know that his mother has lost her life. There are also cleaning staff, teaching secretaries, all ordinary people who come to the school in order to change the status quo of mutants. There are more or less tender stories between them and mutants, but now, it seems that everything has been finished. How's it going over there? Reina's eyes were a little red. All the soldiers are dead. Wayne knocked out one, who seemed to be their leader. Logan replied. Compared with Wayne and Lena, Logan has experienced too much, and countless war experiences have allowed him to accept reality faster. Since ancient times, all wars have been accompanied by death, and there is no way to change this fact. Professor, when will they come back? Wayne turned around, no longer looking at those familiar faces. I just contacted the professor. They will be here in about half an hour. After Reina finished speaking, she continued to do other things. At this critical moment, before the professor comes back, she still needs to take charge of the overall situation in the college. The other members of the team were also busy, and Wayne quietly walked to a flower bed and sat down alone. Everyone around him looked at Wayne with respect when they saw him. In this battle, Wayne single-handedly saved them, so even though everyone was busy now and Wayne was sitting aside, no one said anything. After all, Wayne had been fighting for them all night, always on the front line. Wayne sat quietly aside, watching the crowd in front of him being busy. The corpses of students, employees, and soldiers were sorted and sorted by them. Wayne's focus suddenly became blurry, and he felt as if his heart was being squeezed tightly by a pair of invisible hands, and his breathing became unsmooth. The school that was originally a fairy tale paradise suddenly turned into a bloody hell. A moment ago, everyone was singing and celebrating happily, but now people's corpses and blood are everywhere. Why does this happen? Wayne thought silently. Wayne saw a student crying on a corpse, which seemed to be a familiar friend of his. On the other side, a student kicked a soldier's body out of anger. However, the next second, the body suddenly broke into two pieces, which shocked the student. The corpse seemed to have been cut in half long ago. Judging from the wounds, it should have been caused by Logan's death. What do you think these soldiers are for? Wayne suddenly spoke. The movement behind him and the familiar smell of smoke allowed him to understand who was coming without looking back. Because of the ambitions of the big guys. Logan slowly sat down next to Wayne and blew out a smoke ring again. Whether it's us, the soldiers or the students, they are just pawns in the hands of the big shots. They will do anything to achieve their goals, not to mention just losing some pawns. Are professors considered among those big shots? Wayne suddenly asked. Logan, who was smoking, was suddenly shocked when he heard Wayne's words. Frowning, Logan took a sharp sip and said, "Forget it, but he did this for us. He also has his difficulties. If he wants to play this game well, he needs to abide by the rules of the game." I see. After a long silence, Wayne suddenly laughed. The sky gradually gets brighter, and the sun rises from the east, revealing a golden light that dispels the darkness. But the college has lost the vitality of the past. Although the corpses have been cleaned up, the blood stains and bullets remaining on the ground still remind people of what happened here. Raina and some older students are still busy around. They need to tally up some losses and deaths before the professor comes back. Jason had already walked out of his medical room, carrying a large toolbox around to treat injured students like a field doctor. Wayne and Logan were still sitting on the edge of a nearby flower bed, and Logan's feet were littered with cigarette butts. At this moment, a black plane slowly grew larger from the horizon, and its huge roar attracted many students to watch. As everyone watched, the plane did not return to the tarmac behind the school. Instead, it landed directly in the open space near the stage. Then, as soon as the plane landed, the cabin door slowly descended. Professor. Seeing the professor and others returning, Raina temporarily put down what she was doing and went to greet them. After getting off the plane, the professor quickly looked around at the blood on the ground with a sad expression on his face. How's the damage? 27 students died, 27 employees died, and the number of injured is still being counted. Rena reached out and brushed back her hair, which had become tangled with weeds. The return of the professor finally made her feel relieved. Last night's experience made this young woman who usually only worked as a teacher a little breathless. We were taken advantage of. Magneto also walked up at this time, with anger in his voice. Listening to Reina's statistics on the number of casualties, this old man with a very bad temper seemed like a volcano about to be ignited, suppressing the endless lava in his body. As soon as they invaded Stryker's base, they were notified by Raina. In an instant, the original excitement of destroying the base fell to the bottom, and a group of people returned to the academy non-stop. At this time Wayne and Logan also came over. You go and help first. Professor X waved his hand to the X-Men behind him. Previously, they were responsible for all matters of the school. With their participation, various departments can run better. You did a great job last night. Professor X looked at Wayne and Logan. On the way back, he learned part of the battle through Raina, and was very happy on the spot that he let Wayne return to school. After all, Wayne played a crucial role in yesterday's battle. This should be their head. Logan threw the still unconscious Henry in front of the professor. Looking at Henry, who had been beaten into a state of disgrace, the professor's eyes showed a trace of murderous intent. The tyrannical mental power surged out instantly. Henry, who was originally unconscious, suddenly let out a scream and opened his eyes suddenly. Looking at the two old men appearing in front of him, Henry saw the bald old man's eyes suddenly change before he could say anything. Then he felt a sharp pain in his mind, and then lost consciousness. My name is Henry. I belong to Hydra and am responsible for fighting. The goal of coming here is to capture Wayne and other mutants. For Hydra's great goal, we need more mutants for research. In front of Professor. After a while, after Boone explained everything clearly, his head suddenly tilted and he lost his breath. Hydra. Professor X and Magneto frowned at the same time. It seems that this organization makes them a little afraid. What organization is Hydra? Wayne asked. He had never heard of this name, and he didn't understand why this organization could make the powerful mutant bipolar fearful. A very ancient and powerful organization. Originally we thought they had been destroyed, but now it seems they have not. Professor X said. Due to his cooperation with S.H.I.E.L.D., he knows Hydra better than Magneto. In S.H.I.E.L.D.'s records, Hydra is just a thing of the past, but now this mysterious organization has reappeared in the world. Let's go in and talk. Professor X sat there and thought for a while, then took the lead towards his office. Magneto also ordered his subordinates to stay put, and then followed him. When passing the corpses of students and employees, the two old men supporting the mutant group stopped at the same time. Looking at the corpses lying side by side, the two old men closed their eyes silently, and after a long time, they walked towards the office again. Wayne followed them slowly, seeming to notice that the two old men's bodies became even more stooped at that moment. After entering the office, Logan, who was at the end, closed the door. We need revenge. Once the door closed, Magneto stopped suppressing his emotions. We need to get in touch with S.H.I.E.L.D. now. Professor X sat down in his seat and said without any doubt. After taking a look at the tough professor, Wayne glanced at the dying Magneto with some surprise. Compared with the last time they met, the relationship between the two seemed to have changed somewhat. If it was still the same situation as the last time they met, Magneto would have started banging the table and throwing the bench at this time, but now he is obediently obeying the arrangement. Seeing that Magneto was finally quiet, Professor X suddenly took out a black mobile phone and made a call. After taking a look at everyone present, Professor X pressed the hands-free button on his cell phone. Hey, a man's voice came from the phone. Nick, Xavier Academy for the Gifted has been invaded. It seemed that this was not the first time that Professor. Who did it? The man named Nick opposite fell into silence, and then suddenly spoke. Hydra. Professor X read the name again. Impossible. Nick shouted directly in a low voice, seemingly a little excited. You are doubting my ability. It is impossible for anyone to lie in front of me. Professor X continued. Sorry, I meant that Hydra should have been destroyed during the last World War. Nick seemed to have sorted out his emotions, but he still didn't want to believe in the existence of Hydra. This is a fact, Nick. I lost more than 30 mutant students last night. I need detailed information about Hydra, otherwise I will directly use my own means to obtain this information. Professor X's attitude this time was very tough. Okay, I will send it to you today, but if Hydra really exists all the time, this information may not be of much use. After Nick finished speaking, he was silent for a moment and then said. I will investigate S.H.I.E.L.D. and will notify you immediately if there is any news. In addition to being an agent, Nick can certainly realize what it means if Hydra has been operating silently in the dark, and his internal information is not displayed at all. Okay, thanks. Professor X hung up the phone directly. After hanging up the phone, the office fell into a dead silence again. Professor. Not long after, the computer screen on Professor X's desk suddenly lit up, and then a large list of files appeared on the desktop. Although it was said to be within a day, with S.H.I.E.L.D.'s efficiency, it only took a few minutes to find some relevant information and hack Professor X's office computer. It's all useless records. Professor X quickly browsed it and said. I will go back to the Brotherhood first. During this time, I will send people to investigate information about Hydra, but as long as I find them, I will launch a counterattack. Looking forward to the information for a long time was of no use. Magneto suddenly stood up, turned around and walked out of the office. Notify me then. Looking at Magneto's retreating back, Professor X did not stop him. He now even hopes that Magneto can find Hydra quickly, and then he can take revenge with Magneto. Different from those forces that are out in the open, as soon as an organization like Hydra is exposed and everyone wants to fight, Professor X can run over and kill them all openly. After all, Hydra has always appeared as a villain, and those self-proclaimed righteous organizations have no reason to stop Professor X from destroying an evil organization. I want to talk to you. When Magneto disappeared into the corridor, Wayne suddenly said to Professor X. Logan, the melon eater on the side, immediately stood up from the sofa knowingly when he heard Wayne's words, and thoughtfully closed the door before leaving. What do you want to say to me? Although he was angry just now because of the student's death, Professor X was already facing Wayne with a smile on his face. As a leader, he knows how to quickly adjust his mentality and how to show his positive side to bring more positive influence to his students. I'm going to leave the academy, taking the people in my squad with me. Looking at Professor X's smiling face, Wayne organized his words in his mind and said. Oh why? Professor X put his fingers on the desk and tapped them, and asked curiously. You must know that judging from Wayne's performance yesterday, he still has feelings for the school and its students. Professor X didn't understand why Wayne wanted to go out independently at this time. Because you and Magneto face too many constraints, and all the careerists in the world who are concerned about mutants have focused their attention on you, so you need foreign aid. Throughout last night, Logan's words made Wayne think about this issue silently. After being in school for a long time, Wayne felt that he was just hiding under the protection of Professor X. What happened last night made him feel once again that his abilities might be able to help more mutants. Of course, the days of bickering with Little Fatty and Liao every day in school and having nothing to do with Meow are simple and happy. But if the conflict between mutants and ordinary people is not resolved for one day, this life may be interrupted at any time. Just like last night, there are many potential dangers not only for mutants, but also for ordinary people who show kindness to mutants. Wayne thought he should try to do something. As long as Professor. And he already has a certain strength and can do more things that Professor X and Magneto cannot do, which other students do not have. Both Magneto and Professor. On the other hand, Wayne, an ordinary mutant, even if something happens, Professor. The biggest problem is that mutants are out of control. After all, there are only 10 news about mutants out of control every week. I guess ordinary people are used to it. I understand what you mean. Professor X thought for a while and understood what Wayne meant. Looking at Wayne in front of him, Professor X suddenly felt a little relieved. I still remember that when we first met, Wayne was still a childish 16-year-old boy who liked to use some of the words in the book to scare you to death. Although what he said at the time made me a little moved, he was still just a naughty boy after all. But after last night, it seemed that this boy had grown up a lot overnight and knew how to look at problems from more aspects. Are they all willing to go out with you? Suddenly, Professor X asked. I haven't said it yet. Wayne was stunned. Last night he was so preoccupied with his thoughts that he forgot to ask other people's opinions. What if they don't want to? Looking at the confused Wayne, Professor. Before Wayne could answer, Professor X continued. I suggest keeping them in school for the time being. After hearing Professor X's words, Wayne closed his mouth that he had just wanted to speak. He knew Professor X's concerns and worried that he could not ensure the safety of everyone. After all, I need to face many dangers when I go out this time. I will be responsible for training them during this period, and I will give you a better team when the time comes. Seeing that Wayne became silent, Professor X said. Wayne's proposal just now made him a little moved. Before, he had always been timid due to his identity, but now the idea proposed by Wayne can solve this problem very well. In the future, if there are some things that are inconvenient for him to take action, he will leave it to Wayne. He believes that Wayne is capable enough. And he only needs to continue to show weakness openly to maintain the current situation. As long as Wayne doesn't get caught, they can do a lot of things secretly. And he took advantage of this time to continue to train a group of players for Wayne, and then the entire team would be able to play more roles. Okay. After weighing it in his mind for a few minutes, Wayne finally agreed with Professor X's statement. Then you go say goodbye to them tonight. You don't have to come to me when you leave. I will tell others that you ran away secretly. And then I will help you arrange a new identity. Quote. Professor X thought for a while and said. In just a few minutes, he once again made some supplementary arrangements for the opportunity that Wayne had temporarily mentioned. What identity? Wayne asked. He thought he would just go out and be a passerby, wait for Professor X's notification, and then go out to perform the mission secretly. How about S.H.I.E.L.D.? Their relationship with Hydra is very deep. As a veteran mutant, Professor. How do I get in? He had no objection to where to go, and it would be a good choice to experience a wave of agents. I have a way, you just have to follow orders, Agent Wayne. Professor X winked mischievously and said. As you command, sir. Wayne replied seriously. For a moment, both young and old felt like they were playing a spy game. After coming out of Professor X's office, Wayne went straight back to his dormitory. As soon as I got close to the dormitory, I heard snoring coming from the dormitory. I gently pushed open the door of the dormitory, and sure enough, the little fat man was lying on the bed, sleeping soundly. Although the little fat man did not directly participate in the battle last night, he played the role of a pre-war mobilizer and kept shouting at the top of his lungs to urge students to participate in the school's defense battle. Although the sound was transmitted through speakers, in the environment at that time, every shout of the little fat man was made with real strength. This made the little fat man feel like there were thousands of needles piercing his throat after the battle. Lena, who was in charge of the overall situation, saw the little fat man speechless and asked him and other members of the team to go back to the dormitory to rest. Looking at the sleeping little fat man, Wayne hesitated and did not have the heart to wake him up. Walking to his bed, Wayne lay down on the bed. The soft Simmons made Wayne involuntarily let out a comfortable moan. Even strong people sometimes get tired. Closing his eyes, Wayne allowed his thoughts to flow freely, and soon fell asleep. After an unknown amount of time, when Wayne opened his eyes again, the sunlight outside was no longer dazzling. The little fat man's snoring still lingered in his ears. It seemed that he was really tired last night and he still hasn't recovered yet. Without disturbing the little fat man, Wayne walked out of the dormitory door alone and came to the downstairs of the dormitory. The college's dormitory faces a small park. The students were discussing with each other in this park on the day John escaped. Because the park was far away from last night's battlefield, it was not affected in any way. It was still so peaceful. The trees that were not very tall stood quietly, as if they were guards guarding the school. It's just that the park is no longer as bustling as it used to be, and most students are immersed in grief. This time, Professor Wayne walked through the park and walked outside. In the few months since he came to the school, except for the first time when he was taken by Professor. But on the day he was about to leave school, Wayne suddenly had an impulse and wanted to walk around the school. Outside the park is a large playground. There are a few students scattered on the playground at this time. Some are walking to the dormitory dejectedly, while others are standing alone in a daze, wondering what they are thinking. What? Wayne ignored them and continued walking. Soon Wayne came to where they set up the stage. At this time, the stage is still as it was last night and has not been demolished. Everyone is busy with other things and does not have the energy to take care of the stage yet. Looking from a distance, Wayne seemed to be able to clearly recall what it was like yesterday when he just came here. At that time, the place was so lively, and the faces of every student coming and going were full of longing for the concert. But now, the dark blood stained a large area of the ground under the stage, and some stray bullets made the originally exquisite stage background look like discarded rags. Some students who lost their friends are still hanging around and are unwilling to leave. At this moment, a nearby student seemed to see Wayne and ran over immediately. "Wayne, take me out for revenge, just like you did when you went out to capture John last time, kill those bad guys." The student's voice sounded a little childish, and there were some freckles on his face. He looked about 13 or 14 years old, and was in junior high school. But Wayne could hear the undisguised hatred in his tone. As if he was afraid that Wayne would doubt his ability, the student waved his hand violently after finishing speaking, and a sudden fluctuation appeared in the air. An air cannon the size of a basketball hit a small sapling not far away, killing it. Exploded in half. Professor X will take care of these things. Looking at the student's eager eyes, Wayne hesitated for a while and said. He really didn't know how to answer this student, so he could only use Professor X as an excuse to shirk the question. Professor X is too weak. The students suddenly became excited, and the sudden roar attracted the attention of the surrounding students. The student seemed unaware that he had become the object of everyone's attention, and said loudly to himself. "Do you dare to say that it wasn't for this reason that you sneaked out? John told us today when he returned to school that he had joined Magneto's Brotherhood and personally participated in an operation to destroy a human laboratory, liberating many suffering mutants." As the student unwillingly told all sorts of things, there was some commotion among the surrounding crowd, who seemed to agree with the student's statement. "It's not what you think." Staring at the students in front of him who wanted to rush out immediately to avenge their compatriots, Wayne was silent for a while and said. "Although Professor X sometimes behaves weakly, that is not his intention, and he is slowly changing. When we met today, Wayne had already keenly noticed the changes in Magneto and Professor X. I don't know what happened to them this time and what they discussed with each other. Wayne felt that Magneto seemed to have become less irritable, and seemed to have begun to understand some necessary forbearance. Professor. Although Wayne did have the same idea as the student in front of him when he went after John, but Wayne doesn't think so now. He began to slowly try to think about one thing from more angles and aspects. The student in front of him was still staring at Wayne with an indignant expression, as if Wayne's explanation did not satisfy him. The surrounding students also turned their attention to Wayne. The students who stayed here all lost their best friends or relatives last night, so they hoped that Wayne could take them out for revenge. After looking around, Wayne curled his lips helplessly. These things should have been done by Professor. As a result, for some unknown reason, Professor. This made Wayne feel a little uncomfortable. He was not meant to be a close brother. At this time, he finally began to understand why Professor. After all, it is really difficult for someone to give up the hatred in their heart just by talking. But now that I was surrounded by a group of people, I couldn't ignore them. Since the battle last night, Wayne has existed like a hero in the hearts of many classmates. When most people wanted to run away, he was the one who stood up. So now that these students are disappointed with Professor X, they have pinned their hopes on Wayne. After standing there and thinking for a long time, struggling to figure out how to explain it to the children in front of him, Wayne finally realized that he really didn't have any talent for comforting people. "You are still too weak now," Wayne said suddenly. The students around him were stunned. "Did you resist when you faced the enemy's gunfire last night?" Wayne looked around, and every student who was swept by Wayne's gaze lowered his head in shame. "Now here comes a professionally trained soldier, are you 100% sure to kill them?" Seeing the students lower their heads, Wayne continued. "So, what you should blame is not why Professor." The more Wayne spoke, the more excited he became. Standing alone among the students, a group of people could not hold their heads up. "Why can't you stand up immediately when your friends are hurt? An attack like last night may happen again in the future. If you are still so weak in the future, then not only your friends may die next time, but you may also include yourself. But I promise you now, if you can train yourself to be a qualified warrior in the future, a teammate who can make people trust you and give their back to you, then one day, I will lead you one by one to take care of those who have been. Everyone who has hurt us will be torn into pieces." After saying what he just said, Wayne looked at a group of students who were bowing their heads in deep thought and did not interrupt them anymore, but instead walked faster towards the dormitory. Just after walking 100 meters, Wayne secretly looked back and saw that the group of students seemed to be still immersed in Wayne's questioning, and he suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. Professor X is not easy either. Wayne shook his head and sighed as he walked. He is still smart. Although he cannot comfort others, he can still criticize them. If you make them doubt themselves, then give them a goal, and finally give them a random promise for free, doesn't this have the same effect as comforting others? When Wayne returned to the dormitory, the little fat man had already woken up and was lying on the bed playing with his mobile phone. When he saw Wayne push the door open and come in, the little fat man put down the mobile phone in his hand. "Are you coming back now?" The little fat man, who was sleeping deeply, didn't notice that Wayne had come back to take a nap. Wayne walked to his bed and lay down and replied, "I have already slept, is anyone else awake?" Wayne's cell phone was turned into a pile of scraps during yesterday's battle, which prevented him from even reading his favorite e-books today. "I woke up a long time ago. We are chatting in the group." The little fat man saw Wayne lying on the bed with empty hands, surprisingly not reading an e-book, and immediately understood. In order to facilitate the contact between several people, the little fat man used his own powers to specially create an app, which is only used by members of the team. "Call them over here, I have something to tell you." Wayne sat up on the bed again. Then it was time to say goodbye. Glancing at the serious Wayne, the little fat man didn't know what had happened, but he still sent a message to the others. Not long after, there was a knock on the bedroom door. Wayne walked over to open the door, and when he opened it, he saw Liao standing at the door of the dormitory wearing Doraemon's pajamas. What should I say in person? After Liao walked in, he unceremoniously sat down on the sofa next to Wayne's bed, and the sofa suddenly made an overwhelming creak sound. "Why is this sofa so crowded?" Liao struggled to move his buttocks in the sofa, which was very narrow for him. As Liao's ability to control his powers continued to improve, his weight also began to increase. In the past, because a large part of the food would enter the extra-dimensional space, Liao was used to eating and drinking wantonly every day, and as his ability to control the extra-dimensional space continued to improve. There is less and less food entering the extra-dimensional space, but his appetite continues to increase, making his body size successfully surpass that of the little fat man, and he feels like he is sprinting towards 300 kilograms. Let's wait until they are all here. Seeing his sofa being trashed once again, Wayne sighed, rarely threatening Liao. The little fat man on the side also noticed Wayne's abnormality. If Liao was tossing his sofa like this in normal times, Wayne would have lifted Liao up with one hand and thrown him out like garbage. After a few minutes, Adonis suddenly appeared from somewhere in the shadow and stood silently in the corner of the room. The last one to come was Miaoji. As soon as she came in, Miaoji gave Wayne a hug. She had been worried all night yesterday when she saw Wayne fighting back and forth among a bunch of soldiers. Seeing his team members finally arriving, Wayne took a deep breath. Although he had been mentally prepared for it, seeing the expressions they looked at him one by one, Wayne suddenly couldn't speak. Although they have only known each other for a short time, Wayne has already regarded them as his partners and family. After a long silence, Wayne finally said, "I might be away for a while." "Where to go?" the little fat man asked first. "Have no idea for now." "How long will it take to go?" Liao asked. "Maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years. Wayne pinched his nose. He didn't know how long he would need to play this secret agent game, and now he didn't understand the Hydra organization at all. "It's enough for us to go together," Liao Dali on the side said carelessly. Now that he can freely control his abilities, he doesn't need to stay here and can leave at any time. "Is it dangerous?" Adonis asked in the corner. Although he usually doesn't like to talk, Adonis is probably the most normal-thinking person in the team, and he immediately guessed Wayne's intention. "There is a certain danger, but it's nothing to me," Wayne said with a smile. Indeed, if the criterion for judging danger is whether it will threaten life, then Wayne still doesn't know what exactly would make him feel dangerous. Miaoji, who was sitting next to Wayne, immediately grabbed Wayne's hand and looked at Wayne pitifully. Before he could speak, Wayne touched Miaoji's head and said to everyone, "The soldiers who attacked the academy yesterday and the group of people who tortured me before are all from an organization called Hydra. The purpose of my going out this time is to deal with them." As soon as he finished speaking, the little fat man interrupted. "Then why don't you take us with you?" "Too dangerous." Wayne sighed again. "I can't guarantee your safety. Hydra is a very ancient evil organization. I don't know how powerful they are yet. I'm so powerful now, Adonis is only a little bit worse than me." Liao on the side was suddenly unconvinced. Yesterday's battle made his self-confidence explode again. Ignoring the growing fat man, Wayne continued with a sincere face. "Professor, you sure?" The little fat man looked at Wayne suspiciously. He is not the stupid students from before. If anyone in the team wants to know who knows Wayne best, the answer is undoubtedly the little fat man. Having lived together in an orphanage for 9 years, he knew Wayne's character very well, so he expressed doubts about Wayne's guarantee. "Ahem, really, I promise." Wayne suddenly felt a little embarrassed when his little excuse was seen through. "Take it and remember to contact me every day," the little fat man said as he handed the phone in his hand to Wayne. Based on his understanding of Wayne, since Wayne has already decided on this matter, no matter how much they say, it is useless. They might as well give Wayne some help as much as they can. "This mobile phone was made by Tony when I was working on a defense system with him. It uses the same material as his armor, so that you don't have to change a mobile phone every time after a fight." Taking the phone, Wayne immediately discovered that although the phone looked similar to an ordinary phone, the texture on his fingertips was obviously different. Turning on the phone and looking at the various magical software carefully crafted by the little fat man, Wayne's eyes were a little moist. He glanced at the little fat man with emotion and said, "We still need an e-book software." Taking the phone from Wayne with a speechless expression, the little fat man had an idea and instantly made an app that can download books from all over the internet. Liao on the side suddenly panicked when he saw the gift from the little fat man. Subconsciously, he covered Doraemon's pocket in front of his belly with a confused look on his face. After taking the phone again, Wayne nodded with satisfaction and did not leave immediately, but started chatting with everyone. Because it would take some time for Professor X to arrange his identity, he was waiting for Professor X's notification. After several people chatted for a while, Liao, who had always had a sullen face, finally couldn't help it anymore. He took out a card from his stomach pocket and handed it to Wayne, saying with a heartbroken look, "This is 100. I'll tell you the password later. I don't need the money in school anyway." Wayne, who was comforting Miaoji, was suddenly shocked. "Didn't you say you have no money?" After Liao paid his dues last time, Liao kept mumbling in Wayne's ear for an entire hour, saying that he was simply penniless and had never been so poor in his life. As a result, this impoverished man actually took out another 100 after a short time. "Ah, I found this when I was cleaning out the closet yesterday." Liao tilted his head and said, while silently putting a few more cards in his pocket. Patting Liao's shoulder, Wayne did not reveal his little trick. After all, Liao Shi's willingness to take out 100 moved him very much. Just when Wayne was about to say something more, Professor X's voice suddenly sounded in his head. "We have already contacted you. After you leave the school, walk 5 kilometers south and someone will pick you up. I wish you good luck, Wayne." His expression changed slightly, and Wayne stood up and gave everyone present a hug. After saying goodbye reluctantly, Wayne decisively turned around and left the dormitory. Although he was extremely reluctant to give up, whenever he thought of the torture he had suffered and the life he lost last night, Wayne felt an invisible anger brewing in his heart. This time, he must completely destroy the organization that should have disappeared from the world long ago, and let all those hateful careerists go to hell to be buried with those innocent children. With a slight jump, Wayne climbed over the wall from where they escaped last time. This time Colossus did not appear to stop him. Since coming back, Colossus seems to have become a homebody, and he no longer dares to wander around the academy when he has nothing to do. "Goodbye, my friends." Looking back at the brightly lit college dormitory behind him again, Wayne resolutely walked toward the dark forest ahead alone. After entering the forest, Wayne found a direction and started running at full speed. Like a flash of lightning in the dark night, the big trees were instantly forgotten by him. An owl was sitting on a tree trunk with its big round eyes dazedly, as if wondering whether to eat mice tonight or go find the female owl next door. Suddenly, a dark shadow flew past in the woods, and the strong wind blew the dazed owl straight down from the tree. However, the black shadow did not continue to run forward. Instead, it suddenly stopped in the open space and brought up a large piece of broken branches and leaves. "Something's wrong. With my speed, I've been running for 10 minutes and I still haven't seen the person connecting." Letting the leaves fly randomly in the forest, Wayne raised his head to look at the North Star in the sky to identify his position. However, towering trees and intertwined trunks blocked his view. Taking out the mobile phone given by the little fat man, Wayne couldn't help complaining. "It's full of crappy stuff. There's not even a compass." Little Fatty's phone has various software that can view street cameras across the country in real time, crack various electronic locks, hack any electronic device, etc. But the only thing is that there is no compass that every mobile phone has. Just as Wayne was thinking about whether he should climb up a tree and look at the sky, suddenly a rustling sound came from the nearby grass. "Who?" Wayne turned around sharply and stared in the direction of the sound. After a while, the owl, which had been dumbfounded, jumped out of the grass. "Ooh, ooh." After the owl came out, it stared at Wayne and made a strange sound. However, Wayne ignored the silly owl and continued to stare at the grass behind the owl and said, "Come out." After another long while, a furry orange paw cautiously poked out from the grass, and then a plump orange cat appeared in front of Wayne. "Meow-gee." Wayne stared at the orange cat that suddenly appeared and asked with some uncertainty, "Meow." The orange cat tilted its head and barked at Wayne. Then he pawed away the owl in front of him, pretended to bypass Wayne, and walked towards the grass on the other side. As he walked, the orange cat's little nose was still up and down, as if it was sniffing the scent of mice. Wayne stared straight at the orange cat that suddenly appeared and slowly walked to him, just when it wanted to continue walking backwards. Suddenly, Wayne's right hand moved, grabbed the orange cat's tail, and lifted the plump orange cat upside down. Meow. The orange cat could no longer maintain its original calmness. The whole cat began to show its teeth and claws, and let out a threatening meow, which scared the silly owl next to it, who finally got up again. However, Wayne ignored the threat from the orange cat and instead murmured to himself, "Why don't you cook such a fat orange cat and eat it?" Suddenly, the orange cat's eyes widened, and its struggling limbs began to become stiff. The next moment, the bang sound in Wayne's hand turned into a cloud of smoke. After the smoke dissipated, a petite figure wearing an orange skirt appeared in the forest. A fluffy little tail was exposed under the skirt and was held firmly in Wayne's hand. "How did you come?" Wayne let go of Meowchi's tail, feeling helpless. "I'm worried you can't find your way," Meowji said weakly. "I'm almost at the meeting point," Wayne said without changing his expression. "Which direction did you go after coming out of school?" "South side. This is the north." Quote. The corners of Wayne's mouth twitched. "No wonder I haven't seen the person I met after running for so long. I'm going to S.H.I.E.L.D. It's impossible for me to take an unidentified mutant with me there." Wayne tried to change the subject. "I can turn into a cat." As soon as he finished speaking, Meowji turned into the plump orange cat again. "Their instruments might be able to detect that you're a mutant." Wayne touched Meowji's head, but he still didn't want to take her out. "Even Professor X couldn't find the flaw when I turned into a cat." Quote. Just when Wayne was thinking about how to retort, he was suddenly stunned. "How can you turn into a cat and talk?" Wayne stared at the orange cat with wide eyes. "The abilities I have developed during this period." The orange cat tilted his fat head upwards, a hint of pride appearing on his furry face. "Okay, but remember you can't turn into a human or talk in front of someone from S.H.I.E.L.D. 10 minutes later, facing the unyielding Meowchi, Wayne gave in. If Liao was stalking here, Wayne would knock him out with a punch without hesitation. Facing Meowji, Wayne couldn't make a move. "You will be called Fat Bronze from now on." Following the new direction pointed out by Meowji, Wayne looked at the orange cat on his shoulder and said, "Another." The orange cat rolled his eyes. If people outside saw an orange cat with such a human-like expression here, they would probably scream in surprise. "If you don't obey the arrangements, you will have to go back." Wayne's lips curled up slightly. "Well." The orange cat bumped Wayne's cheek with his head, seemingly giving in. Suddenly a burst of youthful laughter came from the dark forest, adding a touch of warmth to the cold forest. Wayne still walked resolutely toward the black forest ahead, but this time he was no longer alone. "It seems to be here." Pushing aside the tree branch in front of him, Wayne walked towards an open space ahead. After taking 2 steps, suddenly 2 dazzling lights shot out from the empty grassland, and a plane slowly appeared in front of Wayne's eyes. "It's this trick of pretending to be again." Wayne squinted at the plane that suddenly appeared in front of him, and suddenly felt something familiar. "Is this contact person an old acquaintance of mine?" While Wayne was secretly guessing, Coulson's old smiling face appeared in front of him. "Long time no see, Wayne." Behind Coulson was a woman with an Asian face who was staring at Wayne without saying a word. She seemed to be an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. "I guessed it was you." Wayne greeted Coulson familiarly. Speaking of which, this was the 4th time he had met Agent Coulson. Before meeting Coulson, Wayne had always thought that agents should look like those in blockbusters, with cold faces and superb fighting skills. However, Coulson broke Wayne's perception of agents. His hairline receded, his face was amiable, and he seemed to have no temper at all. But this does not hinder Wayne's affection for Coulson. If it were a cold agent, Wayne would probably have to fight with him in a few days. After following Coulson onto the plane slowly rose into the sky. "Is this the cat you just got?" Coulson glanced curiously at the orange cat lying on Wayne's shoulder, and stretched out his hand to tease it. Although it was strange to see Wayne bring a cat to work, Coulson didn't ask any more questions. Anyway, there is no explicit rule in S.H.I.E.L.D. that agents are not allowed to bring cats to work, so why bother to make Wayne unhappy? It is estimated that the few people who founded S.H.I.E.L.D. did not expect that there would be an agent bringing a cat to work, let alone that this strange agent came to S.H.I.E.L.D. through the back door through connections. Before the finger even came close, Coulson saw the orange cat suddenly roll its eyes at him and then move its head to the other side. He retracted his hand without leaving a trace and watched other people in the plane come over. Coulson enthusiastically introduced to Wayne. This is my team. Then he first introduced Wayne to his team members, and then introduced these members to Wayne one by one. The Asian woman who went out with Coulson was called May, and she was a field agent. The pair of young men and women in white coats were called Simmons and Fitz, both of whom were outstanding young scientists. Standing behind Coulson was a muscular man named Ward, who was also a field agent. The mixed-race girl standing at the back is called Sky, and like Wayne, she is currently intern. After the introduction, everyone exchanged pleasantries and returned to their posts, leaving only Wayne and Coulson. So, I am still a temporary employee now. Wayne looked at Coulson across from him in disbelief and asked again. Yes, it should be said that you will always be a temporary employee. Coulson was still smiling, but what he said made Wayne feel a little uncomfortable. Are there any temporary workers as good as me? Wayne stretched out his hand and crushed an iron spoon on the table into an iron ball. Looking at the scene in front of him, Coulson's eyelids suddenly jumped. He took a deep breath and said with a smile, "If you have any objections, you can go to our director tomorrow to report. I will show you where you will rest today." Then Coulson didn't give Wayne a chance to refuse and took Wayne directly to the living area. The living area is very large, and there are luxurious restrooms inside, which are fully equipped with all kinds of small equipment needed for daily life. This is where you will sleep today. If you are bored, there is a bar and wine outside. I wish you a pleasant night. After leading Wayne to the last rest cabin, Coulson was afraid that Wayne would have other objections, so he bowed to Wayne and turned around to leave. Wayne took a look at his residence and placed the sleeping Meowchi on the bedside. Meowchi, who turned into an orange cat, was just like an orange pig. He had already started snoring when Wayne and others introduced each other. Dreamland. Hello. Just when Wayne took out his cell phone and was about to chat in the team group, a voice suddenly came from beside him. When he looked up, he saw that it was Sky, a mixed-race girl who was also an intern. Hello. Wayne nodded politely, moved his body to the left to make a position, and put the phone back into his pocket. Why do you want to join S.H.I.E.L.D.? Sky sat down next to Wayne, glanced at Wayne's eyes secretly, and then looked elsewhere shyly. Wayne began to think of ways to come up with a plausible lie. After all, he couldn't just tell people that the purpose of coming to S.H.I.E.L.D. was to secretly investigate Hydra. It is estimated that only the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. who had the last phone call with the professor knew about this matter. Maybe Coulson, the middle-aged bald man who smiles all day long, also knows. I don't mean anything else. I'm just asking. You don't need to answer. Seeing that Wayne didn't speak for a long time and seemed to realize that his question was a bit abrupt, Sky said again. It doesn't matter, why did you join S.H.I.E.L.D.? Seeing that he didn't have to continue making up excuses, Wayne asked. Because of some accident. Sky didn't seem to want to talk about it anymore. Suddenly, the atmosphere at the scene cooled down. Meow. Meowji, who was dazed in sleep, stretched out on the bed. Is this your pet? What is its name? Sky suddenly saw Meowji sleeping on the bed, and started chatting with Wayne again on this topic. In fact, Sky had just joined S.H.I.E.L.D. some time ago, and was a little unfamiliar and uncomfortable with everything around her. After finally meeting Wayne, who was also a trainee agent, she subconsciously felt a little close to him. Sky seemed to have had pets before and also liked cats, so she couldn't stop talking once she started. The whole person was no longer anxious and shy at the beginning, and the two of them gradually became familiar with each other during this period of communication. Especially when they knew that the other person was also an orphan, a feeling of sympathy appeared in their hearts at the same time. But what makes Wayne a little uncomfortable is that Sky's endless small questions about raising cats make him a little overwhelmed. Not to mention that Meowji is actually a person. Even if she is really a cat, he will not keep her. Hey, what are you talking about? While the two were laughing at Meow's sleeping posture, Ward came over with a glass of wine. Seeing that both of them were looking towards him, Ward picked up the wine in his hand and asked Wayne. Have some. No need. Wayne refused without hesitation. He was able to chat with Sky so happily at first because Sky was a beauty herself, and Wayne was too embarrassed to refuse directly. Later, it was because they were both orphans and temporary workers, so they had many common topics to talk about. And now Ward, a grown man, suddenly came over with a look on his face that said, I want to talk to you. If Wayne could continue chatting happily with him, he wouldn't have only the little fat guy as his friend in the orphanage for so many years. What's more, the first time he saw Ward, Wayne suddenly felt like he was being targeted by danger. Although he didn't understand why an ordinary agent could make him feel Wayne, this did not prevent Wayne from immediately falling down. Just have the words, "I don't want to care about you," written on his face. Wayne, who was lying on the bed, slowly opened his eyes, groped with his right hand on the bed, and finally found his mobile phone under the quilt. He picked it up and saw that the time was already 9 o'clock the next morning. Looking helplessly at Meowji, who was still sleeping soundly next to him, Wayne stretched lazily and slowly got up from the bed. After rejecting Ward last night, Wayne didn't talk to Sky anymore. Instead, he lay on the bed and read an e-book. He was immersed in the book and didn't close his eyes until the early morning. Wayne walked out of the lounge and came to the airplane restaurant with familiarity. I don't know what other Shield planes are like, but Coulson's plane is really complete with various supporting facilities. The kitchen equipment in the plane is enough to open a small restaurant. Ever since they took this plane last time they came to the academy, Wayne and Little Fatty have been obsessed with this plane. Pushing open the restaurant door, other people on the plane were also eating breakfast. "Good morning," Wayne greeted everyone. "Are you still used to sleeping?" Seeing Wayne walk in, Coulson took out a breakfast and handed it to Wayne. "Slept well." Wayne found a separate seat and sat down, picking up a piece of toast and putting it in his mouth. "The bread tastes pretty good, at least better than the one from Xavier Academy for the Gifted." Sure enough, the treatment of agents is better than that of free schools. A few minutes later, Wayne finished the eggs and bread in front of him and took a sip of milk. Wayne shouted to Coulson, who was tinkering with something in the kitchen. "One more, thank you." As soon as he finished speaking, another breakfast was brought to Wayne. Wayne turned around and saw it was Sky. "Don't you want to eat?" "I'm stuffed." Sky showed a smile. Yesterday's exchange made her feel a little dependent on Wayne in this very strange environment. After all, they are all orphans and newcomers to S.H.I.E.L.D. Although this newcomer looks a little special. Last night, she used her superb hacking skills to check some information about Wayne on the internet. I discovered that in addition to having more than 100 million fans on Instagram, Wayne is also very familiar with the famous Iron Man. The more she learned, the more mysterious Sky felt about her new friend. "When can we see the director?" After quickly finishing his breakfast, Wayne asked Coulson. He can't wait to solve his identity problem and start a real agent adventure. "About half an hour." Coulson looked at his watch and pouted. On one side is his boss, and on the other is Wayne, who has Professor. Fortunately, half an hour passed in a flash. As soon as the plane landed, Wayne followed Coulson off the plane, while the others stayed on the plane and stood by. After getting off the plane, Wayne began to carefully look at the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters in front of him. It didn't look as mysterious as he imagined. It was just an ordinary building, but the shape was a little strange. There is a fan-shaped building in the front, and a cylindrical ordinary high-rise building in the back. The color of the entire building is gray. Wayne followed Agent Coulson closely as he walked into the base. As soon as he entered the door, he saw many people in suits flowing in the hall. This is just like an ordinary office building. Wayne couldn't help but ask Coulson in front of him. Everything he saw now was completely inconsistent with the image he expected. "We are a formal organization affiliated with the Security Council, not some shady underground organization," Coulson explained helplessly. The endless variety of spy movies that have emerged over the years seem to have made agents into a mysterious, dangerous, and shady profession. In fact, most agents still lead normal lives except when performing tasks. After entering the lobby, Coulson took Wayne straight towards a transparent elevator. Along the way, people kept nodding to Coulson or saying hello with a smile. "You seem to be very popular. You usually go to work like an ordinary office worker." After getting on the elevator, Wayne said while looking at the scenery outside through the glass. "Thank you, the job of an agent is not as exciting as you think." As the elevator continued to rise, Coulson seemed to become serious, and the professional smile on his face also faded. Ding! Coming out of the elevator, Wayne looked at Coulson, who was looking serious next to him, and reached out to gently pat his shoulder. Relax, you're just meeting the director." Well, our roles seem to be reversed. Coulson shrugged, with that standard smile on his face again. Wayne's comfort made the serious atmosphere he had managed to create disappear. Walking to the room at the top of the corridor, Wayne came to an office with an area of more than 100 square meters. There was a huge desk in the middle of the office. At this time, a man seemed to be sitting on the chair behind the desk with his back to them, but because of the man's height, Wayne could only see bits of black skin exposed on the back of the seat, and it seemed that he had no hair. Your habit of pretending to be every time you appear is probably something you learned from your director. Wayne whispered into Coulson's ear in an affirmative tone. Quote. His eyelids twitched. Coulson chose silence. Hello, Nick. Seeing that the other party seemed to want to continue to show off, Wayne took the initiative to say hello. As early as in school, Professor X told Wayne the name of the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. You should call me director. The seat suddenly turned around, and a bald black man with an eye patch stood up from the seat and stared at Wayne viciously with his ferocious one eye, like a ferocious wild wolf stinging him, own prey. As the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., although Wayne is a temporary agent who came in through the back door, since Wayne has joined S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick needs Wayne to abide by S.H.I.E.L.D.'s rules during this period. It's just Nick's usual routine to show off his power when meeting someone. Usually newcomers who come here will inevitably be a little nervous when they meet their immediate boss like the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. for the first time. But when Nick uses his own momentum to press him, he will often easily destroy the opponent's mental defense, so as to achieve what you want. For example, when he first met Coulson, Nick used this trick to treat Coulson honestly. However, this time, Director Nick was destined to miscalculate. PFF'd. Seeing the black braised egg dressed as a pirate captain in front of him staring at him fiercely, Wayne, who had been holding back for a long time, couldn't control himself anymore. As soon as he burst out laughing, Wayne realized his gaffe and quickly covered his mouth with his hand. But the curvature of his eyes showed that Wayne's smile did not stop. Instead, he laughed even harder, and his shoulders even trembled slightly. Coulson on the side silently glanced at Wayne, who was laughing wildly, and quietly moved a small step to the side to put distance between himself and Wayne. Then he looked helplessly at Director Nick, whose face turned darker, and the corners of his mouth turned up slightly. He had been looking forward to this scene for a long time. Based on his understanding of his own director, he would definitely give a new employee a showdown when meeting him for the first time. But it's a pity that the target of the show of force this time is Wayne. What are you laughing at? Nick's face became darker, and his entire face seemed to blend in with the black eye patch on his own face. As the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., he has led this huge organization for so many years, and it has been a long time since anyone has been so presumptuous in front of him. I think you are quite similar to Professor X. Wayne finally stopped his trembling shoulders and stared at Nick's bald head seriously. Wayne's personality has been like this since he was a child. If you treat him pleasantly, like Professor X or Coulson, then he will be a very easy person to get along with. But if you are like Director Nick in front of you and want to have a head-on confrontation with Wayne, then what awaits you is endless mutual harm. Give your opinion. Nick's expression softened slightly. After all, Professor, one looks like an egg, and the other looks like a braised egg. Anyway, they are both eggs. After finishing speaking, Wayne couldn't help laughing again, and even Coulson couldn't help laughing. In order not to offend his boss, his whole face turned red. While laughing, Wayne was thankful that thanks to Ethan's ability, his hair had grown back, so he could justifiably laugh at Nick's bald head at this moment. Reminiscent of Professor. Bang! Nick punched the table, and roars were heard in the office again. The guards outside were a little curious as to who was so bold as to make this secretive king of agents lose such a temper. After a while, he looked at Wayne, who was still smiling playfully despite his anger. Nick picked up the phone with his hand that was shaking with anger. He was going to call Professor X and send Wayne back, even if he could compensate Professor Disgusting Face. I think we can skip these childish bickering sessions and get straight to the point, Mr. Director. Keenly aware of Nick's little move, Wayne suddenly became serious. He finally had the opportunity to investigate Hydra, and he was not willing to let it go to waste. As long as you can stay, there will be many opportunities to stimulate communication with Nick in the future, so there is no need to rush. Why did you come to see me? Nick put down the phone in his hand. At the same time, his tone also softened a bit. After just 10 minutes of roaring, he found that the roar had no effect on Wayne except that his lungs hurt from anger. I think I'm totally qualified to be a regular agent. Wayne suddenly tensed up his body and pretended to be stiff. Coulson on the side looked at Wayne's sudden change and couldn't help but secretly marveled. Wayne, who had always been lazy, suddenly became so serious and looked like an elite warrior. With his straight stance, strong body, stern expression, and the sparkle in his eyes from time to time, people can't imagine what Wayne looked like just a minute ago. Impossible. Nick sneered and refused directly. Joke. Just thinking about this guy's face just now, Nick couldn't help but send him back. How could he be allowed to be an official agent? You are temporarily under Agent Coulson. He will provide you with some basic agent training. Next, I will decide your future position based on your performance of the mission. Now you can go. Nick's tone was very firm, not giving Wayne any chance to refute. Wayne turned his head and winked at Coulson beside him. Coulson shrugged helplessly, saying that there was nothing he could do. Wayne looked at Nick again, hoping to try again, but as soon as he opened his mouth, Nick interrupted him rudely. Roll. After getting back on the plane, Wayne went straight back to his bed. Since he couldn't be an official agent, he could continue to be a salty fish. Meow. When I lowered my head, I saw a plump orange cat stretching on the bed. Are you hungry? Wayne sat on the bed and touched Meowji's head. Hungry, Meowji said in a low voice, fearing that others would hear him and Wayne would drive him back to the academy. What kind of cat food are you eating now? Stroking Meowji's soft cat fur, Wayne said with some doubts. Just enough food for normal people. Meowji rolled his eyes at Wayne. She can just turn into a cat, but she doesn't really become a cat. Okay. After picking up Meowji, Wayne walked towards the restaurant. There was still a lot of breakfast left unfinished in the restaurant in the morning. Seeing the orange cat in front of him flexibly holding the bread with his paws and putting it into his mouth, Wayne began to silently think about his future plans. He has now successfully become a member of S.H.I.E.L.D. Although he is only a trainee agent, he cannot perform tasks alone and can only follow his boss Coulson. As for why Nick forced him to become a trainee agent, Wayne could roughly guess the reason. After all, Wayne is a mutant, even if Nick has some friendship with Professor. But a player with a sinister face and heart like Nick will definitely not be defenseless, and letting Wayne become a trainee agent under Coulson can learn something about Wayne through Coulson, which is a disguised form of surveillance. So today it seemed that Wayne was just messing around in the past, but in fact he just wanted to explore the other party's bottom line. Although Nick seemed to be losing his temper all the time, it was obvious that he saw Wayne's purpose at a glance, and directly told Wayne that at this stage he could only follow Coulson to play base. Later, if you perform well and pass his assessment, you can arrange a more suitable position for Wayne. After clearing his thoughts, Wayne's eyes regained focus. It seems that his current goal is to integrate into S.H.I.E.L.D. and gain the trust of Coulson, that is, Nick. Just then, Coulson walked in from outside. Wayne, so you are here, don't your cat need to eat cat food? As soon as he came in, Coulson was slightly startled by the sight in front of him. He saw the fat orange cat holding bread with one paw and rubbing milk with the other. The contentment on his face made him subconsciously think that this was not a cat, but a person. It's okay. It just eats like a normal person. What do you want to do with me? Wayne looked at him with a fond look on his face, and Meowji, who was eating and drinking, said. That cute look made Wayne suddenly think it would be nice to have a cat. Ignoring the strange orange cat, Coulson remembered the purpose of his visit. I will take you to the place where intern agents are trained. Although it is just an internship, you must also undergo comprehensive training and assessment. Only after completing these assessments can you go out to perform tasks. Chapter 91. Following Coulson, Wayne came to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s training base. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s training base is much more professional than the fighting arena at Xavier's Academy for Geniuses, with an entire floor dedicated to training. The surrounding walls are made of metal, and the first floor is divided into many different venues. Each venue is a separate environment, sealed on all sides, and can be specialized in training different events, such as fighting, firearms, etc. Each team has its own training environment, and there is not much communication with other teams. Coulson brought Wayne to Training Ground No. 2. Opening the door, everyone in Coulson's team was inside, including Fitz and Simmons, who were in charge of scientific research in the team. Among them, Skye and Ward were standing in the middle of a ring. It seemed that Ward was teaching Skye fighting skills while others were watching. Seeing the door being pushed open, Skye subconsciously turned back to look out the door, and as soon as she turned back, she felt her shoulders being held by a pair of big hands, and then her whole body became airborne. Wade threw Skye to the ground with a perfect over-the-shoulder throw. Looking at Skye, who was lying on the ground with a painful look on his face, Wade said with a cold face, "Don't get distracted while fighting." Wayne, who had just walked nearby, was slightly startled when he heard these words, which seemed to sound familiar. Does every newbie need to be taught a lesson like this? They are conducting combat training. Skye, like you, is a trainee agent and needs to learn basic combat skills first. Coulson explained quietly beside Wayne, and then seemed to remember something, and added, "Of course, you don't need to learn this." Although he never actually saw Wayne fight, Coulson more or less learned some information about Wayne's combat capabilities from Nick. While the two were talking, Skye was knocked to the ground again by Ward. An internet-addicted girl who had not exercised for a long time had no ability to resist at all when faced with a professional agent, and was beaten completely meaninglessly. "Do you always train like this?" Looking at the one-sided battle in the ring, Wayne asked with some confusion. When Wade trained him like this, he thought it was Wade taking revenge and wanted to beat him up every day to vent his anger. Now it seems that he wrongly blamed Wade. Practical combat is the best teacher. Even if you don't learn any attack methods in this process, at least you can learn to take a beating first. Coulson stared intently at the one-sided battle in the ring. Finally, as Skye was knocked to the ground for the 5th time, Skye's weak cry came from the ring. "Enough." Ward stopped his attack in response, and May jumped onto the ring and helped the bruised Skye to the side. "I lasted a little longer today than last time, and I've made a lot of progress." Ward glanced at the watch on his hand and said. Just as he was about to walk off the ring, Wayne's voice suddenly came to his ears. "Is it my turn to come up for training?" Ward was stunned for a moment and turned to look at Coulson. Coulson glanced at Wayne in surprise. "You probably don't need to, Wayne. I think as colleagues, we should understand each other's strengths so that we can make better arrangements when performing tasks, right?" Wayne asked rhetorically. "I agree with this viewpoint." While Coulson continued to struggle, May, who had always looked cold, said, "Plum." Coulson frowned. It was okay for Wayne to be messing around. Why even May started to help Wayne to mess around. "He's right." May ignored Coulson, but looked at Wayne, who was eager to try. Although she and Coulson have the same agent level, Coulson knows far more information than she does. As for Wayne, she only knew that he was a student in Professor X's academy, and that he was very powerful in combat. No matter which country it is, the principle of civility first and military strength second can be universal. As a member of the cavalry, May's own combat power is one of the best in special kilometers. Now that I have met this trainee agent who is said to be very powerful, of course I want to meet him. And what Wayne said does make sense. If you don't even know the strength of the members of your team, how can you formulate a complete strategy when performing missions in the future? Okay. Facing May, who had a tough attitude, Coulson spread his hands helplessly. With Coulson's agreement, Wayne immediately walked onto the ring excitedly. Compared to drinking and talking, I think it's better for men to talk with their fists. Looking at Ward opposite, Wayne suddenly said, "Okay." Faced with Wayne's provocative words, Ward was confused. As an undercover agent of Hydra, Ward's performance in S.H.I.E.L.D. has always been satisfactory, and he has successfully gained the trust of S.H.I.E.L.D. Even in the eyes of the director's confidant Coulson, Ward is also a very outstanding person, agent. However, as a member of another faction of Hydra, he did not know who Wayne was in front of him because of his insufficient agent level. If it were his boss Garnett, the first time he saw Wayne, he would have discovered that this trainee agent who suddenly appeared was the mutant that his old friend Boone dragged him to find out some time ago. At this time, poor Ward could only feel that Wayne seemed to dislike him from the beginning, but he thought hard for a long time and still couldn't find the reason. And Wayne, who listened to his sixth sense, didn't know that Ward was from Hydra at this time, but it didn't stop him from being disgusted by the Ward who made him feel uncomfortable. "I'll let you do it first." Looking at Ward, who was stunned across from him, Wayne said, "You sure?" The repeated targeting made Ward feel a little annoyed. As an excellent agent and an excellent spy, Ward needs to control his emotions reasonably, but this does not mean that he has no emotions. A trainee agent suddenly provoked him in various ways, which made him a little angry. After flexing his wrist, Ward prepared to teach the incompetent boy opposite him a lesson. Looking at Wayne standing there casually, Ward felt a little amused. An unsuspecting rookie didn't know where he had the courage to provoke him like this. Suddenly, with a step forward, Ward quickly came to Wayne and punched Wayne in the unsuspecting head. However, just when Ward's fist was about to contact Wayne, Wayne suddenly moved back, easily avoiding Ward's fist, and then stood back up again the moment Ward withdrew his fist. Because Wayne's current speed was too abnormal, from the perspective of Sky, Fitz and others below, it seemed that Wayne was standing still and not moving, while Ward's punch hit the air directly. Coulson and May's expressions suddenly changed, and they looked at the smiling Wayne on the stage in disbelief. At that moment, they noticed that Wayne's body suddenly shook, although due to the distance and the small range of Wayne's movement, they did not see clearly how Wayne avoided the punch. But this just showed that Wayne's speed was so fast that they couldn't keep up if they didn't concentrate. "What are you doing?" Wayne asked as he looked at Ward in front of him with an innocent face. Ward frowned. At that moment, he clearly saw that his fist was about to hit Wayne, but suddenly it failed. No longer thinking about the reason, Ward stretched out his hand to grab Wayne again. "As long as you catch him, he won't be able to do any tricks." Ward is a full head taller than Wayne, and from his condescending position, Ward can easily grab Wayne's shoulders. However, just when Ward was about to catch Wayne, he felt his eyes blur and Wayne, who was standing where he was, suddenly disappeared. Hearing the sound of breaking the air from the right, Ward was about to punch to the right, but as soon as he stretched out his hand, he felt his arm was tightly clamped by iron pliers. Bang! An irresistible force came, and Ward even screamed before Wayne threw him over his shoulder and hit him to the ground, making a muffled sound. "Oh my God!" Fitz on the side subconsciously narrowed his eyes, thinking that it would hurt to look at this. It was also a throw over the shoulder. Unlike when Ward threw Sky before, Ward just threw Sky casually. And Wayne, how should I put it, was naked and smashed. It was like treating Ward as a big hammer and preparing to use this hammer to make a hole in the ground. Hiss. He lay on the ground and calmed down for a while, until his dizzy mind became clearer. Ward finally let out a painful groan. The blow from Wayne just now made him feel as if his internal organs were a little out of place. Rolling on the ground, Ward stood up with difficulty, holding on to the pillar in the corner of the ring. "This is what I just learned from watching your move." Lifting up, Ward saw Wayne talking to him with a smile. In fact, Wayne only used less than 3 candelas of strength in that moment. After all, he was still a colleague in the future. If Wayne had used all his strength, Ward would have been smashed into pulp by now. "Come again." After taking a few big breaths, Ward felt slightly recovered and rushed towards Wayne again. This time he was careful and kept some force in his punch, preparing to change his moves according to Wayne's next reaction. However, Ward soon discovered that his preparation seemed to be in vain. Wayne, who was standing there with a smile on his face, suddenly disappeared again. Stopping hastily, Ward subconsciously looked to the right, but as soon as he turned his head, he heard Wayne's voice coming from the left. "Sorry, I guessed in the wrong direction." Then a pair of strong hands grabbed Ward's arm again, and Ward's world turned upside down again. Bang! There was another muffled sound, and everyone nearby felt the ground shake obviously. This time even Coulson couldn't help but close his eyes. Lying on the ground again, Ward struggled to open his eyes. There was constant roaring in his ears, and his chest felt a little tight, as if there was a big stone pressing down on his back. Struggling to stand up, Ward held his knees with one hand and raised the other hand. He wanted to say that the practice was over, and then he opened his mouth, but no sound came out. However, Wayne on the other side failed to understand what he meant. Seeing that Ward stood up tenaciously once again and even took the initiative to extend his hand to him, Wayne, who had originally planned to stop, was slightly startled. He knew his strength well, and most people would not be able to stand up after falling this time, but the opponent in front of him still stood up with his tenacious perseverance. And it seems that he plans to continue the practice. For a moment, Wayne wondered if there was something wrong with his sixth sense last time. How could a person with such a strong willpower give people the feeling of a poisonous snake? Wayne no longer used his speed to bully Ward, but slowly walked towards Ward. As Wayne slowly approached, Ward's extended hand began to swing from side to side, although the swing was not large and the strength was seriously lacking. But Wayne could still feel Ward's unyieldingness. In order to show respect for Ward's unyielding will, Wayne once again grabbed Ward's raised arm and threw it over his shoulder again. Bang! This time, even May, who had always been expressionless, couldn't help but frown. She didn't understand why Ward was unwilling to give up at this point. Facing Wayne, whose strength and speed far exceeded hers, May believed that if she were on the stage, she would give up the first second she realized the gap. Because they are agents, not muscle-headed men. Even Coulson, who had always been very optimistic about Ward, couldn't help but feel a little disgusted with Ward. If Ward's senseless persistence were to manifest during a mission, it might not only endanger his own safety, but also affect his teammates and the entire mission. Ward, who fell to the ground, did not get up again this time, nor did he moan in pain. Instead, he rolled his eyes and fainted on the spot. Because of this over-the-shoulder fall, Wayne was stronger than the previous two. He's a strong man. After looking at Ward who fainted, Wayne said to Coulson below. That's wrong, Wayne. As an agent, we need to have a full understanding of our own strength. When faced with impossible tasks and behaviors, we need to give up as soon as possible. Coulson then looked at Sky and the two researchers and continued. You must remember that you will need to keep your mind clear during future missions. Ward gave you a wrong example today, and of course he also suffered the consequences. When he reached the door, Coulson pressed a switch near the door. After a while, a group of doctors in white coats ran in pushing a stretcher. Ward was expertly lifted onto a stretcher and carried out of the training room. The supporting services here are quite complete. Seeing this fluent operation, Wayne couldn't help but praise. You must know that when he was at Xavier Academy for Geniuses, he accidentally knocked Liao unconscious and had to take him to the medical room by himself. Okay, let me take you to contact thermal weapons next. Coulson looked at it and smiled helplessly, then led everyone down to another training room. It was also training room number 2. As soon as he entered the door, Wayne found that the layout here was the same as the place where agents practiced marksmanship in movies he had seen before. It was a very standard shooting range. The difference is that SHIELD seems to have a more complete range of firearms, and Wayne is dazzled by the densely packed firearms. Although Wayne has always relied on his own weapons to fight, he has a special love for firearms. Wayne had tried his hand at using a gun when he had escaped from the cave of the terrorists in the Middle East. However, it may be because Wayne was too nervous at the time, so every time he fired, he could accurately miss the intended target. But now looking at the dazzling weapons, Wayne felt it was time to prove his marksmanship. With his current eyesight and precise control of his body, he may be able to surprise Coulson and the others later. Picking up a pistol from the table, Wayne walked directly to the 10-meter target without looking at the 25-meter and 50-meter targets. After looking at the distance, Wayne nodded with satisfaction. Since he wanted to show off, of course he had to choose a difficult one. The next step is Wayne the gunslinger's shot. Holding the pistol, Wayne listened to Coulson's instructions next to him while adjusting his grip on the gun. Hold the pistol in your right hand, wrap the finger holding the gun with your left hand, pull your shoulders back slightly, take a small step back with your right foot, turn your body slightly sideways, and adjust the pistol in line of sight to a straight line. Good posture. Looking at Wayne's gun-holding posture after a series of adjustments, Coulson nodded. Taking a deep breath, Wayne adjusted his breathing. It was his first official shooting and he was still a little nervous. No need to wear glasses, the enhanced vision can clearly see the red heart 50 meters away. Aiming the muzzle of the gun at the red heart of the target, Wayne clicked the trigger. Boom! As Wayne's finger pressed down slightly, the bullet flew out of the gun's muzzle in an instant. Wayne's eyes were fixed on the fired bullet. With his current eyesight, Wayne could clearly see the trajectory of the bullet traveling in the air. Since it was indoors, there was no interference from external factors. The bullet flew in a straight line in the air, perfectly avoiding the target in the distance and hitting the wall behind. Sky and Coulson in the back glanced at the intact target, then put down their hands ready to applaud in embarrassment. Quote. How can it be? Wayne lowered his hand holding the gun and looked at the bullet holes in the distance in disbelief. The thin green smoke rising from the bullet hole slowly formed a shape similar to a smiling face, seeming to laugh at Wayne's incompetence. Raising the pistol again, Wayne aimed at the red heart 50 meters away and clasped his fingers. Bang, bang, bang. The recoil of the pistol has almost no effect on Wayne. Even with only one hand, Wayne can bear the recoil of the pistol without moving. However, the 3 bullets that placed Wayne's unlimited hope once again deviated from Wayne's expectations. The 3 bullets connected in a straight arc, grazed the target and shot into the wall behind again, and 3 wisps of white smoke once again rose from the wall. Is there something wrong with this gun? Wayne suddenly turned around and looked at Coulson with a serious face and said. He obviously aimed very accurately and shot very steadily, how could he not even hit the target? 4 consecutive misses made Wayne feel a little bad. It seemed like something bad was about to happen to him. I'll try. Coulson took the pistol from Wayne. Not to mention that Wayne himself couldn't believe it, but the melon-eating crowd standing behind them also had a hard time accepting it. It can be seen from the practice in which Wayne completely abused Ward just now that Wayne's physical fitness is very good. In fact, the technical difficulty of this kind of standing target shooting is not high. Logically speaking, even if Wayne fails to hit the red heart, it is not difficult to hit the target. Boom. Coulson raised his pistol and pulled the trigger. The bullet was fired again, but this time the bullet flew out of the hole and hit the red heart of the target. It seems there is no problem. Coulson was slightly stunned after seeing the result, then looked at Wayne with a strange expression and said, "This is impossible." Wayne walked to the table, took out a pistol again, pushed Coulson away, and shot him 3 times. However, history is always surprisingly similar, and the 3 bullets once again perfectly avoided the target. Suddenly, Wayne's face darkened. At this moment, he felt that he was being targeted by the entire world, and he personally felt the deep malice from the world. It's okay, I'm about the same level as you. Sky looked at Wayne's frustrated look, walked over, took the pistol from Wayne, and fired at the target with a not very standard posture. Boom. The bullet flew towards the target again. Although it did not hit the red heart, it shot steadily into the 3rd ring of the target. Quote. Wayne. Sky was speechless for a while, and she didn't know how to comfort Wayne now. She usually hits 1 out of 10 when she shoots, but she never expected that today's hit would be the first shot. Wayne, who did not believe in evil, rushed to the table with firearms again, picked up a rifle and returned to the shooting position. The recoil of a rifle was much greater than that of a pistol, but it made no difference to Wayne, so Wayne simply gave up asking Coulson for guidance on shooting posture, aimed at the red heart and fired directly. Bang! There was another gunshot. The bullet flew out faster than the pistol bullet, and then rushed through the target faster than the pistol bullet and entered the wall behind. Quote. Without saying a word, Wayne threw away the rifle in his hand like trash, turned around and went back to get a sniper. 10 minutes later, Wayne had tried all the types of guns on the table. However, except for the wall behind which was riddled with thousands of holes, the target in front of Wayne still only had 2 bullet holes. One was shot by Coulson and the other was shot by Sky. You guys go ahead and play, I want to be quiet. Wayne slowly walked to the corner with dull eyes and squatted down silently. Why is this? Watching Sky, Simmons, and Fitz, under the guidance of Coulson and May, continuously hit targets in the distance with their guns, and then looking at the marks they left on the wall, Wayne suddenly felt something wrong. Every time he fires a gun, it seems that a magical will suddenly appear next to him in the universe and then forcibly interfere with the bullet he fires. While Wayne continued to doubt himself and the universe, Sky and others finally ended today's firearms practice. It's okay, Wayne, you are strong enough. Coulson walked towards Wayne, who was squatting alone in the corner, and said. Although he still couldn't figure out why Wayne couldn't even hit the target with his strength, it still didn't stop him from recognizing Wayne's strength. A person who can beat the best shield agents into coma with just a casual touch will be a very powerful opponent even without using firearms. At least Coulson thought that even if he was given a machine gun, he would not be Wayne's opponent. It's okay, Wayne. Sky on the side also walked over. At present, apart from Coulson, she is the most familiar with Wayne in the team. Seeing that Wayne, who was usually laughing and joking, looked a little decadent at the moment, she was also a little worried whether Wayne had really been hit. "Well, I'm fine, what's next?" Rubbing his face vigorously with both hands, Wayne temporarily gave up and continued to diss the universe in his mind. "The next step is some theoretical knowledge, which we can learn directly on the plane." Coulson gave Wayne a hand and pulled Wayne up from the ground. "Now you and Sky are the only trainee agents in our team. Before you can carry out the mission, you need to pass the assessment of these theoretical knowledge and understand some things that need to be paid attention to when carrying out the mission. Still need to take exam." Wayne frowned. You must know that he has never read a serious book even though he has grown up. Of course, although this knowledge is of no use in the actual execution of the task, the situation still needs to be resolved. If you have any objections, you can go to. You can ask Nick, I know. Before Coulson even said the person's name, Wayne knew that he would definitely take the blame for Director Lou Dan again. Correct. Coulson smiled and confirmed Wayne's guess. More than 2 months have passed in a flash. During this period, Wayne would travel back and forth between the plane and the training room at the headquarters every day. It was during this period of life that Wayne understood that the treatment of agents was not as good as he imagined. It also solved the problem of why Coulson's aircraft was so luxuriously equipped. This is because Coulson's team doesn't even have a place to live. A dignified Level 7 agent, the confidant of the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., couldn't even get into a staff dormitory, which incidentally caused the entire team to live on a plane for more than 2 months. If the plane didn't have such a big kitchen and so many lounges, it really wouldn't be able to meet the living needs of Team Coulson. As soon as they wake up from bed every day, Wayne and Sky will be pulled by Coulson into a room in the plane that is closed on all sides and has no windows to learn various secret agent rules. Because it was completely closed, the atmosphere in the entire small room was very depressing, making Wayne wonder if this small room had been used to temporarily hold prisoners. However, whenever Wayne asked this question, Coulson would tell him with a smile that the room was designed like this to allow newcomers like them to learn knowledge more focused. If you have any objections, you can go to them. Director Fury. Thinking of the black braised egg's expression and rude attitude, Wayne immediately felt uncomfortable. He could only stay in a sealed small room like a prisoner for 5 hours a day. The only fortunate thing is that there is a beautiful woman locked up together at the same time, which can somewhat soothe Wayne's injured heart. Wayne, what do you think you should choose for this question? At this time, Wayne and Sky were sitting on both sides of a small round table. There was a test paper on the table, which said the S.H.I.E.L.D. Agent Professional Knowledge Test. Wayne turned his pen unconsciously with one hand and stared at the questions on the paper. After reading the questions silently 3 times in his mind, he began to frantically recall the manuals he had read. However, the longer Wayne looked at the question, the stranger the letters on it felt, and he was almost unable to understand the meaning of these letters. Suddenly his eyes glanced, and he saw that the spinning pen in his hand slowly stopped. Following the direction of the pen tip, Wayne said without hesitation, I think choose C. The answer is A. Sky wrote a big A after this question, then looked at Wayne again and said, this question is covered on page 23 of the agent manual. I'm going to collapse. Wayne threw the pen in his hand on the table, and then slumped down on the chair, looking like a salted fish. During this period of time, although the 2 people spent the same time learning the same knowledge every day, but Sky has been able to achieve more than 100 points on every exam out of 90 points. On the other hand, our classmate Wayne scored 100 points in the most exams with a maximum score of 59 points. S.H.I.E.L.D. score requirements are 80 points to be considered qualified. Don't be discouraged, you can do it. Sky encouraged from the side. During this period of time, Sky has been cheering Wayne around like his big sister. 2 months of getting along day and night has made the relationship between the 2 even closer. Sky's appearance gave Wayne a feeling of being taken care of for the first time, and Wayne's usual strength and occasional thoughtfulness made Sky, who had always been insecure, feel very at ease. Dang. At this moment, the door of the small room opened from the outside, and Coulson's smiling face appeared in front of Wayne again. Today's study time is over, what are the results? Although he was speaking to 2 people, Coulson's eyes were always on Wayne. As the direct superior of two people, Coulson certainly understands the level of each of them. If it weren't for waiting for Wayne to come with him, Sky would have passed the assessment long ago. Not bad. Sky put away the papers and books and organized them. The books were densely packed with various knowledge points to help Wayne record. Nice, today's torture is finally over, let's go straight to practice gun control. Wayne stood up from his seat quickly. This time of day was the time when Wayne, the devil, was reborn after experiencing suffering in hell. Okay. Coulson looked at Wayne with a headache and agreed helplessly. During this period of time, Wayne dedicated an hour every day to practice shooting. Although 2 months of hard work finally paid off, compared to the bullets Wayne wasted in these 2 months, Coulson couldn't help but feel heartbroken for Nick. Thanks to Wayne's abnormal physical fitness, he does not need to consider the recoil of the gun, nor does he need to worry about the fatigue of the arm holding the gun for a long time. So every day when he goes to the shooting range, he will try out all the guns, and he will not change to another until the prepared bullets are used up. This left Simmons and Fitz to take advantage of Wayne's study time every morning to go to the shooting range to enjoy their skills. After spending so much time and countless kinds of ammunition, Wayne's progress was only from missing the target every time to hitting 2 rings 10 times out of. This made Coulson wonder if Wayne was deliberately using this kind of thing to disgust Nick. After all, even if you are a fool, you won't only make this little progress by practicing like this. Before going to the shooting range, Wayne took a detour to see Meowji, who was sleeping soundly in bed every day. During this time, Meowji seems to be sleeping 24 of the 23 hours a day, and the remaining hour is eating time. Originally, Wayne was a little worried about Meowji's physical condition, but once when Wayne was teasing the sleeping Meowji, Meowji unconsciously slapped Wayne with a paw, directly breaking Wayne's finger bones in 2. Fortunately, Wayne's self-healing ability is very powerful, and within a few seconds, Wayne's finger was intact as before. But this also allowed Wayne to discover the changes in Meowji. Before that, Meowji could only have the strength of an adult after turning into a cat. But now it's obviously not the case. An adult can't just break Wayne's fingers casually. Coming to S.H.I.E.L.D., cats can also be strengthened. Reaching out to scratch the sleeping Meow, Wayne turned and walked outside. Coulson and Sky were probably waiting for him outside the plane. As soon as Wayne stepped out of the plane, he saw Coulson and Sky standing not far from the plane. At this time, a woman wearing a S.H.I.E.L.D. uniform was standing in front of the two of them, seeming to be saying something. That woman Wayne had seen twice in the past 2 months. Her name seemed to be Hill. She was the deputy director of S.H.I.E.L.D., and she was always with Director Lu Dan. What are you talking about? Wayne walked over and asked casually. Although Wayne's identity is only a trainee agent, he probably belongs to the lowest level of people in S.H.I.E.L.D. But Wayne wouldn't become respectful when he saw his boss. After all, he was someone who just had a direct relationship with Director Lu Dan. There's something about you. Hill glanced at Wayne and said. As the deputy director of S.H.I.E.L.D., she knew very well about Wayne's origins and background, so she did not regard him as an ordinary trainee agent. About me. Wayne was slightly startled. I'll tell you. Coulson shook his head helplessly. Due to some force majeure reasons, your and Sky's exams may need to be conducted today. In view of your true strength, you only need to participate in the written exam, and there is no need to assess combat and firearms. Nowadays, Wayne was stunned again. This bad news came a bit suddenly. It seems that I and my pen have not yet perfected their tacit understanding, and my pen has not yet been able to consciously point to the correct answer every time. Why is there an exam? What will happen if you fail the exam? Are there any make-up exams? Wayne asked. If you fail the exam, you will go home. It was not Coulson who answered, but Hill. Can I ask what some of the force majeure causes are? Wayne pursed his lips and asked suddenly. He felt that some problems could still be dealt with. No comment. Hill continued to remain expressionless. How could she tell Wayne that some of the reasons were because her director disliked Wayne's slow progress? You must know that Coulson is one of the senior agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is equivalent to an important personnel of S.H.I.E.L.D. Many high-level secret tasks require Coulson to handle it. And because of Wayne, Coulson, a senior agent, has been working as a nanny at this base for more than 2 months. Although Coulson himself was very satisfied with the paid vacation during this period, a certain director certainly didn't think so. You can take them directly to the exam. Take the written exam first. After Hill said something to Coulson again, he turned and walked towards the elevator. She seems quite busy, Wayne said while looking at Hill's back as he hurried away. S.H.I.E.L.D. has a lot going on, Coulson replied. Over the years, more and more supernatural events have occurred on the Earth, which has gradually increased the intensity of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s work. The nanny life for more than 2 months was one of the few free time he had in the past few years, but this free time seemed to be insufficient. Come with me. Coulson led Wayne and Sky towards the exam. Originally, Wayne thought that the place where he took the exam would be the same as the place where he studied. He would just find a random room and write a paper and finish. But as Coulson continued to shuttle through the base, Wayne gradually came to a very heavily guarded place. Following Coulson, he kept going around and around, confusing Wayne. He had no idea where he was now. He could only see more and more armed guards in the corridor. It's just a test, is it so complicated? Wayne asked Coulson. Sky on the side was also curiously waiting for Coulson's answer. This is the last hurdle to enter S.H.I.E.L.D. Coulson walked to a door, opened it, and motioned for Wayne and Sky to go inside. I'll wait for you outside and wish you good luck. Walking inside the door, Wayne found that this was obviously an ordinary house. A nerd with shiny hair and thick glasses was sitting at the front. Below him were rows of tables, chairs and benches, like an ordinary classroom. At this time, in addition to the 2 Waynes, there were already 7 young-looking people sitting below. Seeing Wayne and Sky come in, the bespectacled man picked up a pile of test papers and said, "Everyone is here, we can start." Sitting down in the seat behind Sky, Wayne asked a very retarded question when the bespectacled otaku handed over the paper. "Can I use my mobile phone to check information online? If you can use it, you pass." The bespectacled otaku glared at Wayne with his dead fish eyes, and then said with disdain. Taking 2 steps forward, the bespectacled nerd pointed at a device with a red light flashing at the entrance of the room. "I invented this. From the moment you enter this room, all contact with the outside world will be cut off. Not to mention mobile phones, even if you use the most advanced equipment in other countries, you will not be able to contact the outside world." Sharp. Wayne nodded approvingly. However, the nerd-eyed man seemed to disdain to talk to Wayne, and turned his head back to the front position. After curling his lips, Wayne ignored the otaku and turned his attention to the paper. Turning the pen, Wayne looked at the letters arranged one by one in front of him, becoming more and more confused as he looked at them. This time he could understand the questions in front of him, but he couldn't understand the answers. With the last glimmer of hope, Wayne took out the counterfeit mobile phone given to him by the fat man from his pocket. Opening the search engine developed by Little Fatty himself, Wayne entered the first question of the test paper into his mobile phone, and then clicked search. Call out. This phone also made a sound after clicking the search button. It seemed to be specially designed by Little Fatty to increase the user's sense of human-computer interaction. Other students heard this strange sound, but because they were taking an exam, they did not look up to find the source of the sound. Who knows if they would be judged as cheating just because they looked up. After all, some of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s rules have always been subject to change, such as the sudden emergence of some force majeure reasons. Sky, who was answering the questions, heard the noise coming from behind and couldn't help but worry about Wayne. She wanted to turn around and look at Wayne, but after thinking about it, she decided to finish the test paper first and then find an opportunity to send the answers to Wei. Kindness. The bespectacled otaku at the front was also alarmed by Wayne's voice. He stood up and took a look and found that Wayne was holding an iPhone and clicking on something. He couldn't help but sneered, shook his head and sat down again. He was very confident in his invention, and he would be a little worried if what Wayne came up with was some kind of high technology. But seeing that what Wayne took out was a crappy iPhone, the glasses nerd suddenly became curious. How did this person's IQ come to be recruited? At this time, Wayne was indeed surprised to see the correct answer displayed on his phone. Just after a whoosh sound, the answer Wayne wanted quickly appeared on the phone. The speed was faster than using an ordinary mobile phone using Wi-Fi outside, and it also came with a 1,000-word analysis of the question. The little fat man's figure suddenly became extraordinarily tall at that moment. It seemed that as the logistics captain, the little fat man was really a perfect choice. Wayne also glanced at the bespectacled nerd in front of him with a look that looked retarded, and was also a little curious as to how this man's IQ was recruited. Shaking his head, Wayne couldn't help but sneered, picked up the pen at hand and started writing quickly. At the same time, Nick, who was sitting in his office, was staring at the screen in front of him with his one eye. The image displayed on the screen was exactly the scene of Wayne's exam. In normal times, busy director Nick wouldn't care about such a trivial matter, which is equivalent to the entrance examination for new employees. But since Wayne, a special person, was attending this time, Nick specially asked the glasses geek to send a copy of the video of the examination room. Madness. Watching Wayne pick up a black cell phone and start trying to find answers, Nick couldn't help but curse. You must know that although the bespectacled otaku looks ugly, he can definitely be regarded as one of the top geniuses in internet technology in S.H.I.E.L.D. Under the disdainful gazes of Nick and the bespectacled geek, Wayne quickly used Fatty's phone to find the answers to the entire test paper, and copied them one by one on his own test paper. This exam doesn't seem to be that difficult. Looking at the test papers he had answered with satisfaction, Wayne threw the pen away. It seemed like I was the first to finish it. Sky's shoulders in front were still shaking, as if he was writing rapidly. Looking at the other people, some were scratching their heads and ears, some were looking at the sky in a daze, and there was even one who was spinning his pen on the table. It seemed that he was using the same problem-solving ideas as Wayne before. Should I be a little worried about the future of S.H.I.E.L.D. at this time? Looking at the scene in front of him, Wayne's face suddenly filled with a happy smile, and he leaned back on the back triumphantly. After admiring the people in front of him fighting for their own future, Wayne took out his phone again and opened the software to kill the remaining time. As Wayne slowly immersed himself in the book, the 2 hours of exam time flew by. When the time came, the bespectacled otaku at the front stood up from his seat on time and put away the papers one by one. You actually finished writing. The bespectacled nerd picked up Wayne's paper, glanced at it, his eyes widened, and he said in disbelief. Is it weird that I finished writing? Rolling his eyes, Wayne said angrily. Without paying any attention to Wayne, the bespectacled nerd quickly walked up to the front desk, placed all the papers on a scanner-like machine, and pressed the button on the machine. He wanted to know Wayne's results quickly. Standing in front of the machine and waiting for the final result, the bespectacled otaku glanced at the confident Wayne and couldn't help but doubt his own skills. Is it true that his mobile phone can still connect to the internet? Even if it can connect to the internet, we shouldn't be able to find the answer. You must know that although S.H.I.E.L.D.'s written exam is just a formality, the questions in it and the agent manual that Wayne and the others previously studied are all internal materials of S.H.I.E.L.D. It is impossible for the outside world to obtain this information. After all, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s network security system was built by him. He is very confident in his own technology, otherwise he would not be reused in S.H.I.E.L.D. at such a young age. Drop. There was a soft sound, and the monitor next to the machine immediately displayed the scores of the people who took the exam. From high to low, first place, Wayne, 100 points. Second place, Sky, 96. Subconsciously adjusting his glasses, the bespectacled nerd suddenly remembered that the idiot playing with his cell phone seemed to be named Wayne. He actually got 100 points on the exam. The bespectacled nerd suddenly raised his head, looking at Wayne sitting behind him playing with his mobile phone with a complicated expression and murmured. At this moment, he suddenly had serious doubts about his technical level. He didn't believe that Wayne could achieve perfect scores on his own, so there was only one reason left. He actually used a cell phone to defeat his own blocking device and crack his own network. Although the voice of the otaku with eyes is small, it is particularly clear in the quiet and confined space. Everyone subconsciously looked at Wayne, who was sitting in the last row, with shocked expressions on their faces. Only those who participated in the exam knew how deceptive the contents of this so-called agent manual were. This seemingly carefree young man actually got full marks. You must know that there are only a few people in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s history who have achieved perfect scores, and among them is Wayne's old acquaintance, Coulson. Sky, who was sitting in front of Wayne, was the most shocked among everyone. She knew Wayne's true level. A score of 60 on the test was considered to be an exceptional performance, but now I got a score of 100. Looking at Sky's big round eyes, Wayne smiled mysteriously, stretched out his finger and wrote a in front of his mouth, indicating that he would go out before talking. I actually passed the exam, so I'm leaving now. Wayne stood up and walked towards the door. When he passed the glasses otaku, he deliberately held the phone in his hand and turned it around. Seeing the bespectacled otaku's expression of eating shit, Wayne nodded with satisfaction. However, Wayne didn't know that Nick, who was sitting in his office watching the surveillance, was also looking at the screen in front of him with a shit-eating expression. "How did you do on the exam?" As soon as Wayne walked out, Coulson greeted him. As a leader, Coulson's attitude towards his subordinates is really hard to say. The other agents who took the exam sat in the exam room after the exam and waited for their superiors to pick them up. Only Coulson stood outside the door and waited the entire time. Of course, full marks. Wayne raised an eyebrow at Coulson. "I'm serious, Wayne." Coulson sighed helplessly. Although Wayne doesn't have any bad intentions, he is usually a little out of character. He really scored full marks. Sky, who came out later, said, and then looked at Wayne again. "How did you do that?" "We'll talk as we walk." Following Coulson, the three of them returned the same way. "Actually, you can just search it on your mobile phone." On the way, Wayne took out his cell phone. "How is this possible?" Coulson immediately retorted. He has also taken the exam, and he also knows the technical level of glasses geeks in this area. How could an ordinary mobile phone crack S.H.I.E.L.D.'s network in that environment? Unless, it's not an ordinary mobile phone. "Can you lend me your phone?" Of course. Wayne took his phone out of his pocket and handed it to Coulson. After receiving the mobile phone from Wayne, Coulson noticed the difference of this mobile phone. His fingers gently rubbed the phone. The touch was obviously different from ordinary phones. It felt like a special alloy. Pressing the home button of the phone directly enters the home page of the phone without requiring a password. Looking at the software installed on the phone, Coulson found that none of the software he had seen before. Sliding to the second page, Coulson clicked on an app called Super Invincible Browser. What should I enter? After thinking for a while, Coulson casually entered S.H.I.E.L.D. Coulson. As a senior agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., Coulson's real resume will certainly not be posted on the internet. The Phil Coulson found on the internet is just an ordinary company employee, who has nothing to do with S.H.I.E.L.D. However, when Coulson clicked on the search, his personal information quickly appeared on the phone. Phil Coulson, Level 7 Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. How is this possible? Coulson exclaimed. It immediately attracted the attention of nearby guards. Quickening his pace, Coulson turned off the screen of his phone and whispered to Wayne behind him. Who made this phone and this software? Coulson's expression was serious. After all, this is related to the safety of the entire S.H.I.E.L.D. As a global organization, S.H.I.E.L.D. has a strict confidentiality system, especially when it comes to protecting the personal information of its employees. If this phone falls into other hands or the person who made this phone falls into other hands, it will be a devastating blow to S.H.I.E.L.D. At this moment, he wanted to report this matter to Nick. After all, this small mobile phone could cause serious harm to S.H.I.E.L.D. What's wrong? Seeing Coulson's serious expression, Wayne was slightly stunned. He didn't understand why a mobile phone could make Coulson so nervous. If this phone can invade S.H.I.E.L.D.'s network at will, then... Coulson didn't finish his sentence, but Wayne already understood what he meant. At the same time, I also understood the seriousness of the matter. During this time in S.H.I.E.L.D., Wayne learned how these large organizations operate. Although S.H.I.E.L.D. is an official organization, its purpose is to protect all mankind. But if S.H.I.E.L.D. knew about Fatty's abilities, Wayne couldn't guarantee that S.H.I.E.L.D. would take some inappropriate measures. So, who gave you this phone? Coulson repeated the question again. Tony Stark, Wayne answered without hesitation. Then he gave Coulson a strange look. Didn't you cooperate with him? He didn't tell you. Tony. Coulson repeated Tony's name, and then began to think about Tony's arrogant look every time he came to S.H.I.E.L.D., and couldn't help but shake his head. If it were Tony Stark, he would indeed be able to create this kind of mobile phone and this kind of software. And with Tony's character, even if he did this, he wouldn't even think about saying hello to S.H.I.E.L.D. After all, one of the founders of S.H.I.E.L.D. is Tony's father, and Tony is also in charge of the huge Stark Industries. Even some of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s equipment relies on Tony's technology. Therefore, most of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s contacts with Tony are in the form of partners. In another small number of cases, Shield respectfully invited Tony over as if he were an uncle. Put your phone away. Since the matter involved Tony, it was not his level that could intervene. After handing the phone to Wayne, Coulson thought about finding an opportunity to report the matter to his director. Rest assured, putting the phone away, Wayne secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, I am smart. It seems that Tony's signature is still very good. After sending Wayne and Sky back to the plane, Coulson turned around and returned to the Shield building. After entering the elevator, he pressed the top floor button. On the other side, watching Coulson leave, Wayne quickly took out his cell phone and dialed Tony's number. Hello, Tony. Call. There was a somewhat rapid breathing from the other end of the phone. Tony. Listening to the strange sound coming from the other side, Wayne shouted again. Ahem, what's the matter? After a while of coughing, Tony's voice finally sounded on the other end of the phone, but there was a hint of fatigue in Tony's voice at this moment. What happened? Something seems wrong with your situation. Wayne frowned. It's okay, I've had a cold lately, cough, cough, cough. As soon as he finished speaking, Tony coughed a few more times. Okay, I'll find a chance to see you later. You passed the exam. Wayne had already told Tony about his joining S.H.I.E.L.D. and his true purpose. Tony is also using his own resources to help Wayne investigate information about Hydra. Full marks passed. By the way, I'm calling you this time to tell you something. What's up? When Coulson or Director Luden might ask you about a mobile phone, just say you made it yourself. That phone Steven made. Tony understood as soon as Wayne said it. After all, he understands the little fat man's abilities better, and also understands what the little fat man's abilities mean to these organizations. I will tell Nick that I made this phone. Don't worry. Is there anything else? Tony's tone was a little urgent, revealing a trace of irritability. It's okay, I'll see you later, bye. Bye. Listening to Tony's cough, Wayne hung up the phone without thinking. On the other side, Tony threw the phone in his hand next to the sink and held the mirror in front of him with both hands. Tony's clothes in the mirror were a little disheveled, and a few buttons of his shirt were missing from his chest. Through the gaps in his shirt, purple-green blood vessels were expanding around Tony's reactor, looking a bit ferocious. Tony's face was also a little pale, his lips were white, and he looked several years older. Not long after, Tony's cell phone rang again. Reaching out to grab the cell phone on the side, Tony's outstretched hand suddenly shook, and he quickly held onto the table beside him. After stabilizing his body's balance, he picked up the cell phone again and put it to his ear. Hey, Tony, how are you doing? If you have anything to ask me directly, am I very busy? Ahem. Tony's tone was obviously much harsher towards Nick. You are sick. Nick also noticed that Tony's voice seemed a little weak. It's okay, will you tell me or not? You should be aware of your physical condition. After Nick said something incomprehensible, he finally started to turn to the topic. I heard that you made a mobile phone that can hack into the network at will. Yes, I gave it to Wayne. You came to me for this trivial matter. Why is it so strange that your system, which is as bad as the campus network, was invaded? Quote. Sounding like Tony was about to start talking, Nick hung up the phone. Tony did make it, Nick said to Coulson in front of him. Well, I don't think Wayne has any reason to lie to us either. Coulson spread his hands. Although he was only a temporary member of his team, Coulson still gave 100% trust. It's okay, Coulson, you can go and do your work. After Coulson leaves, Nick clicked on the screen in front of him again and said, I want Natasha to come. Not long after, a red-haired beauty wearing a black tights came to Nick's office. What's matter? The red-haired beauty asked. As for Tony, we can start taking action. His body seems to be having problems. Nick said after being silent for a while. You still need to pass a test before you can officially become an agent. Coulson stood in front of Wayne and said. He had a standard professional smile on his face to hide his inner embarrassment. It was already the second day of the exam. Nick called Coulson to the office early in the morning. Coulson originally thought that Nick was going to assign tasks to his team. However, after going there, Nick said that Wayne still needed to pass another test, and this test happened to be the task he originally planned to arrange for Coulson's team, but now that Wayne has joined, and the task is more difficult not high, so after careful consideration, he decided to treat this task as the last test for Wayne. At the end, he added, "Don't tell him it was my decision. As long as we maintain our relationship with Wayne, it means we maintain our relationship with the mutants." He did not question his superior's order. Although Coulson also had doubts in his heart, he still followed the director's arrangements. "What did you say?" Wayne, who was lying on the sofa and playing with his mobile phone leisurely, suddenly raised his head when he heard Coulson's words, somewhat confused about the situation. "You must know that he passed the exam yesterday, and he passed the exam with full marks in first place. I originally thought that after becoming an official agent, I could find a chance to visit Tony, but now another test came out." "Ah, because of some force majeure factors." Coulson's smile was a little stiff. As an excellent agent, he cannot refuse the orders of his own director and can only obey them unconditionally. But from another perspective, Coulson felt a little guilty about asking his players to do extra things for no reason. Well, Coulson considers himself to be a rare kind of person with a conscience among the agents. More agents or players like Director Nick, with a dark face and a dark heart. Ahem, cough, cough. Realizing his dissatisfaction with the director, Coulson quickly stopped his association. "You need to go on a field mission." Another force majeure factor. Wayne frowned. He found that since he came to S.H.I.E.L.D., he frowned much more frequently than before. Mainly because there are too many force majeure factors in S.H.I.E.L.D. He quickly reached out and stroked his brow. Frowning always made him look older, this was what Sky told him. Is this how S.H.I.E.L.D. has always exploited and oppressed low-level agents like us? "Ah, I promise this is the last time. As long as you pass this mission, I will give you 3 days off." Coulson sat down next to Wayne. He could only make up for it in other ways. "Tell me about the mission." "The location of this mission is in India. Of course, we will send you there." Seeing Wayne's dissatisfied eyes, Coulson immediately promised. "But you need to complete the mission alone. A S.H.I.E.L.D. scientist has been kidnapped over there, and you need to rescue him. The first mission is to save people. Aren't you afraid that if I fail the mission, the other party will quarrel?" Wayne asked curiously. He originally thought that the assessment tasks were just some insignificant tasks, but this kind of hostage rescue task was related to a living life. Although the target of this rescue belongs to S.H.I.E.L.D., it was just discovered some time ago that he has some unexplained relationships with other organizations. Coulson said softly. So he was an undercover agent, and he didn't know that his undercover identity was discovered, and he happened to be kidnapped. He foolishly thought that S.H.I.E.L.D. would come to save him. Wayne immediately understood this complicated relationship. In other words, this hostage is actually not important. Even if Wayne's mission fails this time, he can just clear out an undercover agent for S.H.I.E.L.D. "That's right. This is a photo of the hostage. We will send you there early tomorrow morning." Coulson took out a photo from his arms and handed it to Wayne. "I'm going to do my business first. You should get ready. Bye-bye." After Coulson left, Wayne began to look at the photos in his hand carefully. A very ordinary life photo. The man in the photo is probably in his 40s, looks like a British man, has short curly hair and a big belly. It's really troublesome to save people. After throwing the photo on the sofa, Wayne sighed. Now that he has come to S.H.I.E.L.D., he certainly hopes to do every task well. However, rescuing hostages from terrorists is no easy task. Wayne felt that S.H.I.E.L.D. might have actually given up on that scientist, but it was difficult to directly clean up this person openly, so that's why these idiots came out. He returned to his room and looked at the orange cat sleeping soundly in the middle of the bed. Wayne stretched out his hand and rubbed the orange cat's belly several times. Meow. The orange cat opened his eyes drowsily. "We're going out on a mission tomorrow," Wayne said while lying on the bed. "Meow. You can talk, there's no one right now." "What task?" The orange cat stretched lazily and looked around, then whispered in Wayne's ear. "Rescuing hostages from a group of terrorists. Tomorrow I will be responsible for attracting the terrorists' firepower. You can sneak in and ensure the safety of the hostages." "No problem." The orange cat nodded. After sleeping for more than 2 months, she also needs to go out and move her body. Early the next morning, when Wayne showed up at the restaurant with Meowji, he suddenly found that everyone was already sitting neatly in the restaurant, except Ward. Ever since he was knocked unconscious by Wayne, Ward would subconsciously avoid Wayne every time he saw him. Therefore, Ward is usually absent when Wayne appears, unless it is necessary to appear. Hey, why do you all get up so early? Wayne sat down where he always did. After all, today is your first mission, so everyone should pay attention to you. Sky said. Although she had heard about Wayne's ability, she had never seen it with her own eyes, so she was inevitably a little worried. Yes, I made a gadget specially for you so that we can keep an eye on your safety at all times. Fitz said while holding a small machine that looked like a remote control airplane. During this time, Wayne and Fitz's relationship has been going well. After all, they are the only two young boys in the entire team who have more topics in common. You actually just want to watch the live broadcast. Wayne rolled his eyes and exposed Fitz's lies mercilessly. During this period of getting along, Wayne had a rough understanding of Fitz's character. Fitz, who was caught off guard, laughed and continued to play with his little machine. Okay, we're ready to go. We expect to arrive at 11 o'clock. After Coulson ate the last piece of bread in his hand, he went directly to the cockpit of the plane. Be careful when doing missions. May on the side also followed. When passing by Wayne, he patted Wayne on the shoulder and said, "Thank you." He thanked May. Although Wayne didn't have much contact with May during this period, it can be seen that she is the kind of person who has a cold face and a warm heart. Not long after, everyone sitting and chatting in the restaurant felt the plane shake slightly. After staying for 2 months, the plane finally took to the sky again and headed for its destination, India. Wayne lay lazily on the sofa in the leisure area, staring at the retro clock not far away in a daze. Although he was about to carry out his first mission in his life soon, there was no trace of nervousness on Wayne's face, as if he was about to go on a trip. Wayne even hummed softly, singing songs. The second hand of the clock slowly moved to the 12th position with a ticking sound. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. The clock chimed 11 times in succession. This is an extremely old clock, but the sound of chiming the time is still very loud, which makes Wayne, who has had his hearing enhanced, a little uncomfortable. Almost every night, he is woken up once or twice by the clock chiming. We're here, it's up to you once we land. Coulson came over on time. The estimated arrival time was 11 o'clock, exactly. S.H.I.E.L.D's operating style is very rigorous and can calculate various details, such as time, before executing tasks. Can't we replace this broken clock? Wayne asked. No, this is a treasure I bought specially. Coulson looked at the clock on the wall with the same burning eyes as when he looked at his precious car. Wayne couldn't help but shiver. No wonder a lot of people can't find a wife even at their old age. The plane landed in a remote open space, and because the stealth system was turned on, no one noticed their arrival. Getting up from the sofa, Wayne found everyone gathered near the door of the plane as soon as he walked out of the leisure area. Even Ward reluctantly stood aside. After all, the two were still teammates. Even if there was some minor friction between them, they still had to show up at such a critical moment. Are you sure you want to take it with you? Coulson pointed to the orange cat on Wayne's shoulder. Others looked at Wayne with strange expressions. This is the first time I see someone taking a pet cat with them when they go out on a mission. A dog can understand it, but this fat cat with a big belly. Meow. The orange cat lying on Wayne's shoulder suddenly became unhappy. Lifting up his flesh pad, he stretched out his little claws hidden inside and waved viciously at the air twice. Okay, fat copper, come and play with your sister. Sky walked over, reaching out and trying to lift the orange cat off Wayne's shoulders. During this time, Sky would come over to tease the orange cat every day when he was bored, and would also secretly whisper to the orange cat. However, she didn't know that the orange cat in her arms was actually a mutant, and her whispers became the topic of conversation between Meow and Wayne every night. The orange cat jumped directly and nimbly towards Wayne's other shoulder. No problem, it will help a lot later. Wayne waved his hand, indicating that he really wanted to take the orange cat out. Are you the biological robot newly developed by Tony? Coulson stood a few steps closer and carefully looked at the orange cat on Wayne's body with wide eyes. I didn't realize it before, but after the last cell phone incident, Coulson suddenly felt that these unattractive things around Wayne might be Tony's latest high-tech development. Otherwise, why would Wayne bring an ordinary pet cat with him on his mission? Ah, you can ask Tony. Wayne was stunned for a while and then said awkwardly. In my heart, I couldn't help but admire Coulson's ability to associate. Okay, I'm leaving. Without talking to his teammates, Wayne got off the plane amidst his teammates' instructions. Following the direction given by Coulson, Wayne walked forward for a few hundred meters and finally saw rows of low houses ahead. As soon as he approached the house, Wayne heard a burst of noise, male, female, English, and Hindi. It was like a hodgepodge, which made Wayne, who had lived in Shield for a long time, suddenly feel the breath of life. Passing through the alley, Wayne came to a long street, which seemed to be a local commercial street. The dense flow of people made Wayne's scalp feel numb just looking at it. There are shops on both sides, and there are some vendors setting up stalls in the middle of the road. The irregular arrangement and display make the whole street look noisy, and there are all kinds of garbage everywhere on the ground. You soiled my carpet, asshole. A vendor with a street stall grabbed a passing woman and held a gray carpet in his other hand with several obvious stains on it. I didn't touch your rug at all, I was just passing by. The woman explained anxiously. She was just passing by and didn't step on anything. It was obvious that the vendor saw that she was easy to bully and wanted to blackmail her. This kind of thing happens all the time in the local area. The local police will not come out to deal with this kind of thing at all. There is no surveillance on the open-air street, and there is no way to understand the situation at that time, so they usually leave it to themselves. This makes many hawkers with poor business use their brains to pick out locals or foreign tourists who look easy to bully. Of course, this also makes there more thieves here. While Wayne was standing there watching the excitement, a very thin little Indian walked past Wayne. As he passed by, he staggered and bumped into Wayne. Sorry, I didn't mean it. With his hands on Wayne's body to regain his balance, the little Indian sincerely apologized to Wayne and then walked back again. But Wayne grabbed his arm. What are you doing? The little Indian whispered, looking a little flustered. The loud shouting attracted the attention of nearby passers-by. In addition to some passers-by who were watching the vendors and women, another group of passers-by started to watch Wayne. Seeing the people around him starting to talk as they looked at Wayne, the little Indian seemed to gain some confidence. Let go, do you want to fight on the street? My friend is a policeman here. The little Indian stood up straight again and his voice became louder. At this time, several tall locals emerged from the crowd. Let him go, foreign boy. A burly man stood in front of Wayne and said, seemingly the leader among these people. He stole my stuff. Wayne glanced at the burly man and did not let go. How could I steal something if he lied? The little Indian tried hard to pull his arm out of Wayne's hand, but Wayne's hand held him firmly like an iron clamp. After trying several times, not only could I not pull my hand out, but it actually caused some pain in my arm. So he glanced at the burly man for help. I want you to let him go. This is not your country. The burly man lowered his head slightly and said in Wayne's ear. At this time, the onlookers had obviously reacted. The moment the burly man came out, the topic of discussion changed from what will happen to the little man later to what will happen to Wayne later. But no one came forward to seek justice. Do you know who I am? Wayne cocked his head to the other side. As soon as the burly man approached, Wayne smelled a strong smell of sweat, as if he hadn't showered in weeks. Who are you? The burly man's expression changed slightly. They are a professional group of thieves, considered veterans here. But if the prey they choose really has some background, most of them will choose to admit it and apologize to the other party. My name is Nick Fury. Wayne tilted his head slightly and spoke to the burly man with his chin. Nick Fury. The burly man was slightly startled when he saw Wayne's arrogant look. Start searching your memory carefully for everything about this name. According to the way Wayne behaved at this time, this name should be that of a person with considerable power or influence. This kind of person makes them, the little gangsters living at the bottom of society, untouchable. So for a while, he was a little afraid to take action. Suddenly, the scene came to a standstill. After a long time, the burly man seemed to have thought of something, and asked Wayne with some fear. You are a relative of Director Fury. Chief Fury was the head of the police force in their area. He is also the person that these little gangsters fear the most. Director Nick is not an Indian, but an Indian-American mixed race. He once saw director Nick himself from a distance, and he was probably in his 40s. If he had a son, he would be almost as old as the boy in front of him. Wayne was also stunned when he heard the burly man's words, and a lot of questions instantly appeared in his mind. Director Fury. Why does the gangster leader in front of him know the true identity of Nick Fury? Didn't Coulson say that the identities of all S.H.I.E.L.D. staff are confidential? Doesn't the director belong to the staff? Ahem, yes, I am Director Fury's brother. Although he couldn't figure out what was going on, Wayne still nodded proudly. Hurry up and return my things to me. Wayne glared at the little Indian. Sorry. The little Indian didn't react when he saw the burly man. He quickly took out a mobile phone from his arms and gave it back to Wayne. There were also sighs from the surrounding crowd, as if they were lamenting that today was not a good show. Are you sure you are Director Fury's brother? Just when Wayne was about to take his cell phone and leave, the burly man asked. Yes, something happened. Wayne looked back. Boy, Director Fury is over 40 years old, beat him up. The burly man shouted loudly to his younger brother behind him. Seeing a group of gangsters rushing towards him, Wayne suddenly regretted it. Why did he add that he was his brother? Suddenly, Wayne thought of an article in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s agent manual, which states that one must not reveal one's identity during missions. Wayne raised his head and looked at a small machine floating in the sky not far away. He gave his name as Nick Fury, so his identity was not exposed. I don't know if this little machine can let them hear what I say. Go to hell. A gangster rushed to Wayne, holding a steel pipe in his hand. Stepping back slightly, Wayne dodged the gangster's steel pipe and sent the gangster flying into the crowd with a backhand punch. Suddenly, there was a commotion among the crowd watching. An Indian man who was watching the fun didn't seem to realize that watching the fun was also risky. He stood there and giggled stupidly, and was knocked to the ground by the gangster who flew over. The surrounding crowd immediately retreated toward the back. Instead of leaving, they continued to watch from a distance. This leaves a wider fighting venue for Wayne and the gangsters. Seems to realize that Wayne is not a soft persimmon. The gangsters at the back began to become more cautious. They no longer rushed forward one by one, but instead gathered around in groups of 3 or 5. Grabbing the steel pipe that the gangster hit, Wayne didn't even bother to dodge this time. To be honest, with the physical quality of these little gangsters, even if Wayne stood there and let them hit him with a steel pipe, it would not cause any harm to Wayne. During this time, Wayne's magical power seemed to have undergone new changes. Wayne felt that his muscles were no longer lazy, but full of strength, and his skin seemed to have become more elastic and thicker. At least now it would be difficult for an ordinary person to cut through Wayne's skin with an ordinary knife. But there have been new changes in my bones recently, and it seems that my bones are starting to feel slightly itchy from the inside out. Similar to the feeling I had occasionally when I was a child when my body was growing the most. When this kind of subtle itch appears, it doesn't make people feel irritated, but makes people feel comfortable. At least Wayne felt comfortable. With a little force on his hand that grabbed the steel pipe, Wayne successfully snatched the steel pipe from the gangster's hand. Boom, boom, boom. Knocking 3 times in the air, before the 3 surrounding gangsters could react, Wayne had accurately hit their heads. The 3 gangsters were instantly beaten, rolled their eyes and fell down. The sudden change in the battle situation caused the few gangsters behind who were a step slower to stop suddenly. One by one, they held steel pipes and looked at the calm-looking Wayne in front of him, trembling. The burly man standing at the back also noticed something was wrong. All 4 of his younger brothers were already lying on the ground in the blink of an eye, and the other few younger brothers were obviously frightened out of their wits. After hesitating for a moment, the burly man felt that he needed to take action at this time to restore his momentum. However, looking at Wayne, the burly man felt that his legs were numb. It seemed that he had stood for too long today and needed to go back and rest. Hurry up and end it, I still have business to do. Looking at the gangster in front of him who didn't dare to step forward, Wayne threw the steel pipe in his hand to the ground. If he continued to hold the steel pipe, he was afraid that he would be killed later. As Wayne's pole hit the ground, several gangsters finally gathered their courage and charged forward again. However, their courage only made them fall to the ground faster. The onlookers felt their eyes were dazzled. The foreign boy was like the cheating hero in one of their Indian movies, knocking down several gangsters in an instant. Mom, everything in the movie is real. We really have such powerful people here. An Indian little boy shook his mother's hand and said happily. He knew a kid from abroad who once ridiculed their country's movies, saying that their country's movies were all fake and all they produced were Superman. But today, he saw Superman with his own eyes, just like in the movie, and he was ready to fight back hard the next time he saw that kid. Seeing all his little brothers fall to the ground, the burly man cursed in his heart. While Wayne's eyes were not locked on him, he hurriedly ran behind him, hoping to blend into the crowd. However, the surrounding onlookers had an unprecedented tacit understanding at this moment. No matter which direction the burly man ran, the crowd in that direction immediately fled to both sides. The burly man randomly found a direction in his panic, and started running wildly. However, while running, a figure suddenly blocked his way. Looking at the panicked burly man in front of him, Wayne couldn't help but said, "As the boss, can't you have some backbone?" "What?" The burly man looked at Wayne as if he had seen a ghost in broad daylight. After screaming in surprise, he continued running in the other direction. Boom! Wayne rushed forward and killed the burly man with one punch. He was not in the mood to act with a bunch of gangsters. However, Wayne failed to control his strength this time. Like a basketball, the burly man drew a perfect arc in the air and fell into another circle of onlookers. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.